This is the Lake County Board of County Commissioners Agricultural Lands Workshop on June 23rd, 2025 in Board Chambers, Administrative Building, Tavares, Florida.
is on? No, mic is not on.
Yes, that's right. Just trying to get Nan in here.
Recording in progress.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this June 23rd, 2025 meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. And as you all know, our focus today is agriculture. And we are going to start our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. And I'd like to welcome Kirsten Ainsley, representing Mount Dora FFA, and Danica Keel, representing Lake County 4-H. They're going to come forward, and Kirsten will recite the FFA Creed, and thereafter, Danica will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I believe in the future of agriculture with a faith born not of words but of deeds, achievements won by the present and past generations of agriculturalists in the promise of better days through better ways, even as the better things we now enjoy have come to us from the struggle of former years. I believe that to live and work on a good farm or to be engaged in other agricultural pursuits, it is pleasant as well as challenging, for I know the joys and discomforts of agricultural life and hold an unborn fondness for those associations which, even in the hours of discouragement, I cannot deny. I believe in leadership from ourselves and respect from others. I believe in my own ability to work efficiently and think clearly with such knowledge and skills as I can secure, and in the ability of progressive agriculturalists to serve our own and the public interest in producing and marketing the product of our toil. I believe in less dependence on begging and more power in bargaining, in the life abundant and enough honest wealth to help make it so for others as well as myself, in less need for charity and more of it when needed, in being happy myself and playing square with those whose happiness depends on me. I believe that American agriculture can and will hold true to the best traditions of our national life, that I can exert an influence in my home and community which will stand solid for my part in that inspiring task.
Thank you. Hold on.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Kirsten, and thank you, Danica. We appreciate that. We are honored today to have several distinguished guests with us. First, I'd like to recognize Senator Truenow in the front row, Keith Truenow. And I believe that Representative Cobb is on her way, so when she's here, we will certainly recognize her.
Representative Cobb is actually not here today. She does send her regards. She's on business via one of the subcommittees in Tallahassee.
Okay. All right, appreciate that. Just want everyone to know that Senator True now serves as the Agriculture Committee Chair in the Florida Senate. So we're very proud of his work there, and we appreciate all that he does for our community. Without further ado, we are very honored today to have the Florida Agriculture Commissioner, Wilton Simpson, and he is here today, and he's going to give us an overview on agriculture in the state of Florida. And so we appreciate you making the trip to be here in Lake County. It is our honor to have you here at our meeting. And as you know, this is an extremely important topic to our community. And you probably heard as we lined up this meeting that there's deep concern with the threat of agriculture in Lake County and throughout the state of Florida, but particularly here in our county, where we see a lot of development pressures and just circumstances that are leading to farmers deciding to, stop their endeavors and move on and do other things. And so we are interested in hearing the state of agriculture in the Florida and get your thoughts on our community as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you, and it's an honor to be here today. It's a real honor to be here today and to just talk a little bit about the importance of agriculture to the state of Florida in economic terms. Today in the state of Florida, 2 million people went to work in the agriculture. Second leading driver of the economy, over $200 billion of economic output, and is thriving in Florida. And again, and during a pandemic, during a recession, agriculture is the leading driver of the economy in the state of Florida. When you're in better times, non-recessionary times, of course, tourism is number one. So we're very proud of the economic status that we hold in the state. But the reality is everyone needs a farmer 3 times a day, right? And that's the more important issue. And when you think about agriculture, I think of it in terms of national security. And today we all know that we're fighting over in the Middle East again, major wars. We're on the precipice of potentially a major war, and oil prices. We spent trillions of dollars on oil, fighting over oil, and many lives, American lives. And to have a 6-month strategic supply, by the way, here in the United States, that's what we have. We have a 6-month strategic supply in case the wrong oil field gets blown up. Think about your food in terms of, what if there were 7 days of no groceries in the grocery store? Right? You'd have chaos in this country. And in a matter of 30 days, you'd have people starving to death. So anytime a government is going to tax, put a hurdle in the way of, regulate agriculture, that's the lens you have to look through. And you have to think about the smallest farmer in that food chain. And several of the things that I would like to mention here today, one of the things is the wildlife corridor in the state. The wildlife corridor represents about 18 million acres. As Senate President, it was one of my top priorities to put in place and define the wildlife corridor, so then you would be able to protect it, right? You define things so that then we can put resources towards protecting that area. We're a little over 9 million acres today, which means we've got about 9 million to go. The wildlife corridor does run through in several areas of Lake County, and it's something that as a local government, obviously you're aware of, but should be aware of. What is the wildlife corridor? There's an official map you can Google and look at, but the way I look at it is if you Google a map of the state of Florida at nighttime, you will see all the beautiful lights in the state. You'll see all the beautiful lights around Lake County. Everywhere it's dark on that map is a wildlife corridor. It's where we grow your food, it's where the water, the aquifer is recharged, and it's where animals traverse the state. If we want our grandkids' quality of life to be similar to ours or better, you have to protect that wildlife corridor. And so I think as you think about it, from a local government perspective, it's something that should be high on the list. Since 2022, we have a program called Rural and Family Lands at the Department of Agriculture. It's been in place since 2001. So the first 20 years of that program, we accumulated about 56,000 acres of land in the Rural and Family Lands program. This is where we buy development rights from farmers. What are the advantages to buying development rights rather than buying property? And I think this is very important because in some cases you have to buy it, but it doesn't mean you have to maintain that purchase. But if you decide to buy development rights instead of buying property, you generally pay 40 to 50 cents on the dollar of the fee simple. So your money will go twice as far buying easements rather than buying property. The second thing would have to happen is if this board or the state buys a piece of property, it comes off of the local tax rolls. If you buy the development rights, it stays on the local tax rolls at whatever the previous rates were because it's in Greenbelt. So you have private people taking care of that property. And by the way, they have to use what we call BMPs, best management practices, to take care of that property. If the county purchases property or if the state purchases property, you then have to come up with additional dollars then to manage that property. That's a challenge, right? And so, and it's in perpetuity. Now, you could have a lease on some of them and avoid some of that, but in the long run, you're going to be responsible for paying those bills. And the really good part is if you buy those development rights from farmers, that property stays in production agriculture in perpetuity in theory. And so we're very proud of those things. This year in our, again, I was saying since 2022, I've secured about $700 million for the department in purchasing development rights. We went from 56,000 acres secured 2 years ago to over 215,000 acres today. And with this additional dollars allocated this year, I hope to be well over 300,000 acres before the end of the year. So we are doing as best we can in securing that wildlife corridor and removing those development rights. An additional thing we did in the Farm Bill this year, we've got a lot of solar farms coming up in the state of Florida, and they're going all over the place. A lot of those solar fields are on really good agricultural land. So in this year's Farm Bill, we said anywhere there's a solar farm, the first one was put in the state of Florida in 2009, anywhere there's a solar farm, when it gets decommissioned, the utility has to remove those solar fields and their equipment. The state of Florida, the Department of Agriculture, has the first right of refusal on that property. So our intention with that would be is to buy that property, and this is something the county could do also, because we're going to have to buy it back from the utility at that point, remove the development rights, and then surplus it right back into agriculture. And so when you're thinking about these solar farms taking up a lot of our agricultural land, starting in about 15 years or so, we should start seeing our first solar farms go back the other way. And we're really looking forward to that time when you start seeing our agricultural land come back in those areas. At least we have that as an option today. At the state level, we've done many things to try to protect agriculture, and I just jotted down a few just to mention in the last 5, 6, 7 years. We started agritourism. You have a lot of agritourism in Lake County today where farmers can enclose their barns or use their barns for weddings or 4-H meetings or sheriffs or what have you. You can have meetings in those barns. That was a big win for a lot of small farmers have done that to be able to maintain their way of life. People go out to those farms and get to see green space. The right to farm bill. We've nearly eliminated nuisance lawsuits to your farmers in the state of Florida. That bill was passed while I was Senate president, and what we said there is we had all these folks during COVID moving out to buy the farmland beside us, and then they were wanting to tell us how to operate our farms, right? That's the next thing that happens when population moves towards you. And we did two things in that bill, and I didn't realize how many billionaires around the country dislike agriculture, but they were many lawsuits from out of our state that were suing our farmers on nuisance lawsuits, basically putting them out of business. And you think, well, why does farmers not want to continue to farm? Well, if they're profitable, they will. And of course, if they don't have lawsuits to the tune of some cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars annually, they can stay in business. So we did two things. We said, if you're going to sue that farmer, you have to live within half a mile of them, so you're going to be a neighbor. Number two, when the farmer wins their lawsuit, you have to pay their attorney fees. So that certainly has eliminated a lot of those nuisance lawsuits. We've updated all 13 BMP manuals at the state level. A BMP manual, Best Management Practices, allows farmers to work within that structure to make sure that they're not overusing water, nutrients, fertilizers, all those things that would go into farming. We also put an additional one in place this year was for the small farm, less than 20 acres. We've talked about that for many years. This year we went ahead and did that. I think that's very important. Those manuals had not been updated in some cases well over a decade, and some maybe even in 2 decades. We did them all in the first 2 years. We banned in the state of Florida our foreign enemies from being able to buy agricultural land or land around our military bases in the state of Florida. We banned fake meat from being sold in the state of Florida. You'll hear, of course, I'm getting sued today for doing that. But you have a lot of California companies that want to get rid of our beef industry in the country. They believe you have to be net zero by 2035 or 2050. Just pick your number, right? And we're not going to let them destroy our beef industry in the state of Florida. And we don't even know if their product is even safe at this point. They have provisional FDA go-aheads. And I said, look, in the last 20 years, there's been 10,000 provisional go-ahead shot down in the end from the FDA. We are certainly not going to risk our way of life on a maybe. And when it gets right down to it, I believe it's more greenhouse gases to produce a biomass that they would send you. You would grow in a Petri dish, and then you would use your handy-dandy 3D printer to print out the piece of meat that you would like for it to look like, right? And we're not going to do that here in the state of Florida. And one of the things I'd love to mention, too, is about our FFA. I know we have a few kids here today from FFA. We found out several things about ourselves. So if you go back 3 years ago, we did a great grant program at the state level because we had a lot of parents who wanted to put their children in FFA but couldn't afford it. We had approximately 30,000 kids in FFA 3 years ago. We did a 3-year grant to make sure that it would produce the results we wanted. Today, we have over 65,000 kids in FFA. And that is private parents and private students on their own taking advantage of this, not some state heavy-handed mandate. That's number one. Number two, we discovered there were many school boards in this state that would not give excused absences for a 4-H or an FFA event from school, which sounds ludicrous because we want more and more of our children in those types of activities. So 2 years ago, we passed the bill that said, you shall give an excused absence for FFA and 4-H sanctioned events. And then part 3 of that came this year when they said, well, we can't build agricultural facilities on our school systems because we're not zoned properly. And so in this year's Farm Bill, we took that away also and said on any educational facility, you can build agricultural facilities, barns, greenhouses, and the like, so that our kids can not only participate in agriculture and learn about agriculture, but then participate in their local fairs with those projects. So when you think about, I think what we're mostly here to talk about today is the ideal of partnering, the ideal of how do we preserve as much of our farmland as possible. At the Department of Agriculture, after this coming week, we'll know if we continue to get our $250 million. We have a ranked list of projects, and I believe there may be 300 projects on that list currently in order that we would start buying those development rights. And let's say that Lake County has number 47 and number 117 for the sake of argument, and there are several from Lake County on that list. If Lake County had a matching grant, 50% grant, we take that from number 47 and just move him right to the top of the line. So if Lake County wants to stretch its taxpayer dollar as far as possible, it would go into the rural and family lands. Part 2 of that, and that's the easy way for Lake County to have this achievement, is to look on that list and say, we will partner on the Lake County projects. Number 2, if you had additional resources and you thought, well, I'm going to have to buy some of these farmlands, because not all farmers want to sell their development rights. Some of them want to sell their land. This year, just like as we did with the solar farm, you could have a program to where you could purchase a farmland, remove the development rights, and surplus it. And what would that create? Let's say you bought a piece of property for $10 million in Lake County, and fee simple. And then you thought, okay, well, if we strip the development rights and sell that to another farming family for $5 million or $6 or $7 million in most cases, you have that much more money to put in your program again. So I believe I heard you'd had $50 million. You could easily turn that 50 into well over $100 million, either through partnering with the department or buying properties where you had to and then surplusing those properties immediately back into ag production. Here's the really good part. All the things I said earlier would still count. Once you surplus that land back out to farmers, it goes right back on the tax roll. The farmer is agreeing to use best management practices to maintain that farm and that property. And so you'd have to be careful about, the type of farming, and to be very broad, right? Because today it may be row crops, and 30 years from now it may be warehouses with crops inside of them, right? It could be any of those things that would be greenbelt permissible. And so if I were going to put an easement out there that was blind before I would do it if it was greenbelt permissible, then a farmer should be able to do those things. By doing that, you would minimally double, and I would say you could almost get a 2.5 to 3 timeser out of your dollar here in Lake County. That's going to support what the county would like. It's going to help you get to your goal quicker of how many acres do we need to preserve in Lake County, how many is within the wildlife corridor. And then we don't only do wildlife corridor at the department. About 92% of our projects fall within the wildlife corridor. But we take them in a ranked list, and if they're outside the corridor, we do those too. So, it's great to have that wildlife corridor, but we need to preserve much more than that. And so as you think about agriculture and you think about what we've done with the Fresh from Florida program, if you're not familiar with that program, you should look that up. That's our only antidote to really bad trade agreements. If you're buying fresh from Florida products, you're supporting green space. You're supporting the aquifer recharge area. You're supporting the wildlife corridor. And so we've really pushed that. 2 years ago, we had about 450,000 people on our social media sites. Today, we have over 1.3 million people on that Fresh from Florida program. And if you buy your groceries on a cell phone, like a lot of people do, you actually have to go past a Fresh from Florida product to get to something else that's in that store when it's in season. And if you go to our website, you can see what's in season. And we're very proud of the accomplishments of Fresh from Florida. We're going to continue to grow that brand. And again, it's one area to where we can really support Florida farmers, because if Florida farmers are profitable, we have many things to overcome. The 350,000 people are going to move to the state of Florida this year, net. 350,000. We've got to overcome that. We've got to overcome land prices. We've got to overcome a lot of challenges, hurricanes, all the things that we overcome, and a continuing mutating farming business. 25 years ago, we produced 290 million boxes of citrus. This year, we're going to produce about 10 million boxes because of citrus screening substantially. But citrus screening, canker, hurricanes, just one thing after the next. The most important thing we can do is to preserve this farmland for the long-term benefit of the state of Florida. And with the dollars that you currently have, or if you decide to put additional dollars towards those, if you give yourself that type of flexibility to partner through the Rural and Family Lands, to partner with other organizations, and not get in a position to where you buy a piece and think you have to keep it, that's the big one. That's where I get in trouble sometimes. We have a lot of land in this state. The development rights could be removed from and sold, and you'll hit a nerve with a lot of environmentalists on that. If you want to buy the other 9 million acres of land, where are you going to get the money to do it? And if you remove those development rights and surplus some of these lands that are not environmentally sensitive, by the way, we all know that, right? And I've worked extensively when I was in the Florida Senate. The Everglades Restoration Act was one of the bills I did. The funding of all of those reservoirs down there, the C-43 and 44 and the EAA reservoir, the Southern Reservoir, Northern Storage. I was a part of all those things. Repairing between Kissimmee and Okeechobee, repairing that canal. We've done an amazing job trying to clean up those areas. We've also done an amazing job of cleaning up our spring sheds. We currently put $75 million a year towards those efforts of state dollars only before you get to the basin boards and things. So we've done an amazing job of these things, and I think scientifically we could go out, and this is what I ask the environmentalists to accept. If you want to actually do 3 or 4 million more acres in the next decade, the only place you can get that much money is if you have to buy these properties, is to remove the development rights and surplus them, because those additional dollars can be used in this program. So as you develop your program, I would make sure you have that type of maximum flexibility to be able to do either of those things. And then if you have something you're buying that's very environmentally sensitive, of course you're going to take that off the rolls and keep it. And then some of them you may use as recreation, same thing. But all of that production agriculture property are capable of being production agriculture that can be surplus, would be a funding source for additional purchases. So thank y'all for having me here. I'll be glad to try to answer some questions if there are any.
All right. Well, appreciate that information. Any questions from board members?
I have one question. I completely understand how this would benefit all of us here in Lake County is if we were to purchase the land, strip the development rights, and then sell it back for farmland. The problem we're facing here in Lake County is we have municipalities that come in and annex and add their own densities to the land. How do we stop that?
That's a tough one.
At the ballot box. No,
That-
it's easy. At the ballot box. In all seriousness, it's kind of amazing that, from time to time, I'm an entrepreneur. So from time to time, I've bought farmland, and you get overrun by growth sometimes, and you sell it, and growth comes in there, whether it's a county or a city. The fact is when you buy those lands, they are zoned a certain. You can look at all your zoning today and all the entitlements that are out there today. And if you buy a piece of land that's entitled, then you're buying that entitlement. And but the only way that I know, and you've got a lot of pressure on, I live in Dade City, Florida, just outside of Dade City, and same thing there. There are thousands of houses that are slated to be built there, and we don't have adequate sewer systems, water systems. And the only thing you can do is continue to not rezone to heavier density properties. And a lot of those were done 20, 30 years ago by a lot of our farming families. And so they have those entitlements on them. But otherwise, the only way I know to do it is to, first of all, you can buy it. So you can go in and buy land that you don't want developed. You can strip those development rights and sell it back into agriculture. That's a way to do it. And that's probably the biggest way from an entrepreneur or a private enterprise. If I own a piece of land and I want to sell it, I'm going to sell it to where I can get the most money, right? That's what we're supposed to do when we're negotiating those deals. If the county or a city wants to stop some of that growth and the entitlements exist, you're going to have to go write a check in most cases. But in case number two, the city of Zephyr Hills ran out of water 18 months ago, had to put some certain kind of building moratorium on until they renegotiate with our SwiftMud to get additional water. So you have water restrictions, you got sewer constraints, you've got all types of internal problems that you could have. And by the way, the vast majority of the pollution that you're seeing in our waterways, farmers get dinged a lot. And the vast majority of our farmers are using best management practices today. It's septic systems. Now, through the building code, we've increased those requirements to, where you have to use the aerobic type systems and things like that. But it's still, when you're thinking globally of Lake County and you know where all your cities are, you've got to focus your attention where that you think that growth's coming, where you want to stop it. And the easiest way to do it I have seen is buy the development rights, or in the case where you'd have to buy those properties and surplus them, that's the other opportunity to do so. The third opportunity is not, if it's not properly zoned the way they want to do it, then that's a political decision that the local boards would have to make.
See, that's the problem. What we're facing is we have ag land that is 1 to 5. A city comes in and annexes it and makes it 4 to 1. And we can't stop it because they're now a municipality. Municipality takes precedence over the county's code. So that's what I'm asking. How do we change that?
You've got to change the will of those local municipalities, number one. Number two would be to buy those lands or development rights of those lands in and around those cities where they don't have the appetite to continue doing it. Once that development right is bought, I get a lot of pushback of, well, you can always remove them. We in the Department of Agriculture have never had one that we've surplused ever so this is in perpetuity when you buy those development rights.
So maybe I'm misunderstanding. When we buy the development rights, municipality or another government
Nobody gets it.
entity can come back and put more entitlements on it?
That's correct.
Perfect. Thank you.
Once those development rights are gone,
That's where I was missing it.
I'm
Thank
sorry,
you.
yeah. So that, once they're bought, it's literally an act of Congress, act of the cabinet to undo it in any fashion.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner, you mentioned that under the Rural and Family Lands Act, that you're waiting to see whether that $250 million is going to stay in the budget. And if that stays, as far as the wildlife corridor properties go, those are the top priorities or not?
They get ranked. I appoint as a commissioner, I appoint folks from the University of Florida and through the department, they come together with criteria that they use to rank the properties. It's blind basically, so they all get ranked and then we just start going down the list. And again, if you look on that list, and you can look on the department's list now and see who in Lake County would like to participate, because they're on the list, and where are they currently ranked. Now, the ones that just came in January are not ranked yet. They will be ranked in the next few months, and you'll see where they're all ranked. If those projects are important to Lake County, you would engage our office and say, hey, we've got money, and if you're willing to come here, we're willing to do a 50-50 match. We would immediately send a team to Lake County to do the analysis and come up with the pricing. And out of all of the lands we've engaged, all of them, we're 100% right now. Out of all these properties we've engaged on there doing this, we have one now that's in question out of, I don't know how many we've bought, 60, 70, 80 of them. And so it's a very successful program, very fair program, very analytical, and we've had a lot of success at those. So if I were in your exact position, I would look at that list, and obviously we can give you a contact there at the department to follow that list, but you could take every one of those off of your projects next year, and I don't know how many are on there, but I think it's several thousand acres in total.
Okay, and then you mentioned a term called the Green Belt permissible.
Mm-hmm.
So you gave an example of in the future, for example, more happening inside of buildings as opposed to maybe row crops. And
That's right.
but there would still be sufficient property available that could function as a corridor for wildlife and green space?
That's right. So, yes, ma'am. So when you think about Greenbelt permissible, today a lot of people have beef cattle, and that's what they do. Some people have pine trees. Some people have row crops, watermelons. We just had a big watermelon season. Strawberries, citrus. You got citrus in Lake County. You've got a lot of different agriculture products in citrus. You got a big winery here in Lake County. You've got a lot of really good agriculture. If it were me and I were in your positions, I would not restrict your agricultural uses for that land in the future. When you strip those development rights, green beltable, permissible uses is the way I would define what you could do next. And so, no, generally, and I'll give you an example on my egg farm that I had in Trilby. I was probably using 20 acres of it there was very intense buildings where chickens were housed. The other 220 acres was open land. And of course, that's a green belted process, and you need eggs. You need a lot of eggs now, especially. And so when you think about agriculture, I would make it very simple for the people who would want to come purchase that property to be able to know they would have broad opportunities for agriculture, which is what we want. When you have that, and again, another thing you may want to look at, and our team could certainly help, you may want to say something like for every 200 acres, there could be one house built, right? So that farmer could build there, and if they buy 400 acres, they could have two houses, one for them and one for their kids or something. And so we negotiate those on the back end now if we're buying those development rights, and a farmer wants to add a house for their kids or grandkids or something, that obviously takes away from that total appraisal. But those things can all be negotiated in up front. And if you do a few of those things, it'll more incentivize more people to want to bid on it. And what I have seen over the years is I believe if you bought a $10 million piece of property today and that was fair value, and you give yourself, say, 24 or maximum of 36 months to strip it and surplus it, you'd probably get $6 to $8 million 3 years after the purchase for that land that's only good for agriculture. You take that money and you put right back into the same program, and that would perpetuate the program for quite a while. It'd be sustaining for quite some time. And a lot of folks have suggested let's just do this going forward. That's okay. But there may be a lot of properties here that would be really good agricultural land that could be surplused and put back in production and put back on the tax rolls. Just something for the board to look at.
What's the prognosis for citrus? You mentioned that it's not looking good this round. Is there any hope that's going to bounce back, or what are you hearing?
In this year's budget, there's over $100 million to support the citrus industry to replant. It's called a CRAFT program. Any of your farmers that are out there listening, and they're aware of this probably if they're in the citrus business, the state will help you replant those trees to get them in the ground and get going. We have got genetics. We have a tree called the Donaldson, most everybody's heard of, but there are others that is, and even CRISPR technology that's worked in citrus, where we've not only eliminated perhaps the greening, but also canker. And so I believe what the industry, the goal, and I was with a group a few weeks ago, their goal would be to return maybe to a 40, 50, 60 million boxes a year, which would be substantially less than what we were, but it would be, of course, 6 to 10 times what we have today. Citrus would be a great crop. There are many crops, though, that people are planting in Florida. There's peaches, there's blueberries, there's all types of critical mass type products that need to continue to come in. The challenge with citrus is going to be is we could support an industry of 290 million boxes 25 years ago. The question today is can you go back to 40 or 50 million boxes? Is there enough market for it today? I believe there is, because I believe that parents want to have orange juice and grandparents, and they're going to send fruit to the school with their kids to eat for lunch. So I think there's a market there for it, but that would be another challenge that they're going to have to overcome. And the facilities to pack that citrus, right? We've lost nearly all of our ability to pack that citrus now, and so we're going to have people take risks, entrepreneurs, and there was, I believe, $10 million in the budget to help keep some of those facilities available in case we can get back on track. So the citrus industry is working very hard. Some of the most resilient people you're going to know on this planet are your farmers. And there are a lot of people that would love to plant citrus again. There's a lot of farmers in South Florida that's water farming today, saving the state of Florida a lot of money by removing nutrient on their farms from water in and around the Everglades. That was another option. If citrus comes back strong, they could quit the water farming business and go back into the citrus business. So there's a lot of land available, and but it's something that we're going to have to continue to support from a state and federal level if we want to see a robust citrus industry again here in the state.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, Commissioner, I want to thank you so much for coming today. This is a big day for us in Lake County, and I will attest that you're being humble. I see you out all over the state talking about the Florida Wildlife Corridor. I've seen you at several events over the years speaking, and then your Rural and Family Lands Protection Program that you're the greatest advocate for. So thank you so much for doing that. And corridor compatibility is the word. We do have a representative from the Florida Wildlife Corridor here today, and ag is corridor compatible. We were at the summit 2 weeks ago at the Florida Wildlife Corridor Summit, and you were a speaker there. But and I don't know how many people were there, but there was a good portion of the people there from around the state of Florida were in ag. We're actually part of that, and equestrian activities as well too. So it does show that ag is corridor compatible, and our lands through the countywide conservation strategy document that we have done, we actually have mapped arable lands, the good quality agricultural lands especially, and that goes into that countywide conservation strategy. Some of the science that you mentioned is there to promote a program perhaps where we buy these development rights down. And I guess my question just related to that is your thoughts on TDRs, because transfer development rights outside of perhaps a program where we're matching money to get those easements on properties, but then also having an optional TDR program available in our county, one that, we're being really careful, I think, trying to make sure that one works. We get one that works. There's a few around the state that do. But what are your thoughts on that? I mean, does that just help our program go further, or what?
Thank you for that. And we always have to remember that your farmers are your first environmentalists, right? Mm-hmm. Farmers want to take care of their land. They want to stay on their land. They want to produce food. So wildlife corridor compatible, that's a big checkbox there. When you're thinking about TDRs, and I've never been on a local board, so I've not really dealt with TDRs a lot, but I would have every tool in my toolbox. You can look around the state and see other programs that have worked very well. You can drive up, obviously, the cost and the price of those developments by having TDRs, and because you've got to go somewhere and negotiate. But I certainly would have that as a tool to where you could go remove development rights and get development rights on another piece of property or a little more density somewhere where it's more appropriate, where you already have the infrastructure, the roads, the sewer systems, the water systems, and things of that nature. And actually, I think there are restrictions, even at the state level, relative to those things, relative to be able to put those cities putting in many more houses than they have perhaps water for. I know that in my area of the state, in Pasco County, there's been several cities that had to quit growing houses and annexing property and things like that because they run out of room. So I think having a database of where all your development rights are, where are they, right? What's possible for Lake County? I think Pasco, it has 700,000 people today. And we were about like you now, about 20 years ago, about 400,000, 425,000 people. So in 20 years or so, we're up to 700,000. And I know there's a number, I don't know if it's a million or what it is, but there is a number that you know how many sites you've approved or how many the cities have approved. And I think using that as part of the ability to take down part of your wildlife corridor, your agriculture area would be an effective tool. Those things don't cost you dollars, right? It costs you opportunities in areas because you're going to remove them from one area and put them in another area. But generally, it would keep it a little more compact and keep that rural and family lands program, wildlife corridor program. It would tie into those things. So done properly, I think it can be an effective tool.
Yeah, it sounds like all of this goes hand in hand with us working with the cities and the cities working with us, because it won't work if we have the continued annexations and the upzonings on those properties. It'll make this program completely unsustainable. So we've got to have coordination.
And I think going and identifying those lands around those cities that may be vulnerable to you buying the development rights would be a good place to start. I know, in our area of the state, if Pasco County would have done that 20 years ago, Dade City wouldn't be sprawling the way it is. But again, a lot of those farming families, their land is their retirement. They need to sell that land at the end, or they're going to pass it down to the next generation. So the ideal of buying those development rights or TDRs is a way to that farming family. That's their 401k. I always told my wife, we're going to build one more chicken house. The most dangerous thing in the world is an egg farmer with $1 in his pocket. He's going to build one more chicken house, right? And so farmers, we tend to do more of that. And then we got really quadruple whammy here in the last 5 years with the Biden inflation. And, you could plant bell peppers 5 years ago for $1,800 an acre. Today it's $8,000 an acre. Well, if you're a small farmer, you can't take that risk, perhaps. And so when you look at all the different crops and the amount of inflation and, of course, COVID and hurricanes and 350,000 people a day moving here, we do not need more regulation in agriculture. We need to get people out of the way of agriculture.
So I kind of have a tough one, and I don't really expect you to answer it unless you really want to. But you mentioned the nuisance lawsuits, and it brought to mind a couple of the places we have in Lake County that are marijuana production facilities. So there's that blur between agriculture and actual industrial type uses, and it's created conflicts with surrounding properties because of the smells, the sounds of the generator and the humidifiers and the lights and all of that. So is there any hope that Florida could distinguish between that type of use versus what we're talking about is agriculture, where you grow stuff that people need to eat and survive? And not to say that what they're doing at those production facilities isn't important, but it just feels like it's more industrial than it is agricultural.
Most of that, is determined by your property appraiser. So if your property appraiser of Lake County gives someone greenbelt to do industrial type products, then they have greenbelt, and then they have that entitlement. If you have a production facility only, a processing facility only, that's probably not greenbelt. If you've got, and I don't make judgments on them. Everybody's elected in this state on the property appraisers, are duly elected to do their job, and for the most part do a great job on that. So you may have a challenge with your property appraiser issuing greenbelt where they maybe not should. Generally, that's not the case. It's normally the other way around. And by the way, I always love the tough questions. I normally tell people this up front. If you serve in the legislature for 8 or 10 years and you ask me a really tough question, I can give you like a 5-minute answer, and you're going to be like, what in the hell did he say? I didn't say anything. But the reality is that if you look at some of those things that would be between your property appraiser and that farmer, and if they are purely a manufacturing plant, that's probably not greenbelt. And then, by the way, all site things are regulated back to the local government. So if you had a slaughterhouse, for instance, you can't put everything down the city sewer and that'd be okay. Mm-hmm. That's up to the city, and that's up to the city to regulate or the county. And things of that nature. Even in agritourism, we said off-site parking, noise, things like that would be regulated by the local governments. And so, there's some ways there that local governments can intervene. But if a farmer has green belt on their property, and that's not ag zoning, it doesn't matter what the zoning on the property is. I could have 100 acres of industrial property zoned and plant pine trees on it and get it green belted. Then that counts. Agricultural zone land does not count in itself. It has to be green belted by the property appraiser, certified before it counts as farming.
Yeah. I know with like the marijuana production that they have to grow and produce on the same location. So I think that's where it gets really complicated from a legal standpoint. So we'll keep working on that and trying to look out for the folks that are getting impacted. But this has been really helpful. Any other questions before we wrap it up?
I just want to make a statement. First of all, Commissioner, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Very insightful. If this was a private entity, you wouldn't have $250 million in the first month. This is an absolute fabulous program to have, and we can parlay it and continue it and continue it and continue it.
And what I would say to everyone here today, we're in Lake County today. Every county in the state has finally woken up to this. Some of them's been awake actually, but the quicker you can put your program into, if come July the 1st, we'll have that $250 million. Any project that's on that list that Lake County wants to partner with, we can start in July doing the assessment. And that process is normally just a few months. So before the end of the year, you could actually start doing some of your work. And the main thing I would say is just keep it as flexible as possible in the ways you can spend these dollars. Because the more entities that you can partner with, and there are more than just rural and family lands in the state that do these things, but we're probably the biggest one to do it. But there's many entities that do it, and you just have to be careful when you're not, dealing with a Department of Ag in Lake County have very similar interests, but you have a lot of organizations that buy development rights, and as long as you have control of the end product on those, you probably are in good shape there too. So there's a lot of matching grant opportunities, and I know a lot of counties are, as fast as they can, putting a pot of money in place to do this same thing. So the sooner you start on this project, I think the more likely you'll have success. And if you have to buy property, remove those development rights and sell it, get your money back and do it again.
All right.
And just so I'm 100% clear, if we strip the development rights, they cannot be put back on.
That's
Perfect.
correct.
Thank you.
And that's the
I
way
think
you're
it's the easement.
That's right. When you take a conservation easement, you should be, and your lawyers will do a very good job at this, I hope. You have to be very clear that these are in perpetuity, and that's the way they're all worded. The cabinet has some special power sometimes to be able to swap. Let's say you had, our rules are, we normally get 3 times as much value as we give up. So if there were 500 acres in Lake County that DOT was going to put a road in, and you said, oh my God, we got to have that road, can't do without it, and it happens to go through one of our easements, I have seen other counties say, okay, we will give you that, but we're going to give you that 30 acres to put the road in, but you got to give us 500 acres somewhere else to offset it. And then, of course, that's a board judgment, because sometimes they'll come with swampland, right? Sometimes they'll come with something you don't want. But if you do that right, that is certainly permissible, but it's something that is extremely rare to have happen. And anybody that's selling those development rights to the department know they're in perpetuity. There's no misunderstandings on this at all.
Thank you.
Well, again, it's been an honor to have you here. We appreciate you taking your time to visit with us this afternoon, and I think we all certainly have learned a lot today, and we will stay in touch with you in your office.
We'll be ready. Thank you.
All right, moving along in our agenda, and before we do our next presentation, which is from the president of the Thousand Friends of Florida, I want to recognize that Ryan Atwood is in our audience today. Ryan, if you don't mind just standing up and letting us recognize you. Ryan is on the St. Johns River Water Management District Board, and he's also a local farmer. And so we're just really fortunate to have you serving in that capacity and looking out for the interest of everyone in the district, but particularly being our Lake County member of that board. So, all right. And also, one more thing I wanted to ask. If you are a farmer, or you've been a farmer, or you are associated with farming, would you mind just standing up so we can recognize you? And I would be remiss if I didn't note that Jim Stivender is in our audience today, and Jim was the Public Works Director in Lake County for many, many years, and Jim is a farmer, and he's here today in that capacity. We appreciate that, Jim. Okay, moving now to our presentation by Paul Owens, President of the Thousand Friends of Florida, and we're going to talk about conserving agricultural land and continue this discussion.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners, distinguished guests, Senator Trunow. I am Paul Owens. I've been president of Thousand Friends of Florida since 2018. We are a statewide, nonpartisan, nonprofit advocate for planning for fiscally and environmentally sustainable communities in Florida. We are based in Tallahassee, but I live in Orlando, so I've spent plenty of time here enjoying Lake County. And one of 1,000 Friends directors, Timothy Sallin, is the co-CEO of Cherry Lake Farms in Groveland. 1,000 Friends prioritizes a number of policies to carry out our mission of sustainable development, including preserving high-priority natural and agricultural land from development. Last year, with our partners, the University of Florida's Center for Landscape and Conservation Planning, we released a report on the impact of population growth, development patterns, and sea level rise on the future of agriculture in Florida, and I'm going to be talking about that for the next few minutes. So using population projections from the University of Florida's Bureau of Economic and Business Research, which I think is the same source that you all use in your planning, our state could add another 12 million residents by 2070. And a report projected at that growth rate, Florida could lose 3.5 million acres to development in the next 45 years. And that total would include 2.2 million acres of agricultural land, which is roughly about 20% of the current amount of farmland under cultivation in Florida. Or I say under cultivation, it also includes ranch land and silviculture. So losing that much agricultural land would not only impact Florida's economy and food security, it would also take a big chunk out of the ecosystem services that agricultural land provides. These services include protecting water quality and quantity, mitigating flooding, preserving wildlife habitat and biodiversity, sequestering carbon, promoting agritourism and outdoor recreation. And as we all know, you can't undo development. You can't unring that bell. Once farmland is lost, it's lost forever. But fortunately, there are a number of strategies that we see to achieve our objective of protecting high-priority natural and agricultural land from development. One is purchasing land outright through state programs like Florida Forever or local programs like Lake Forever, which 80% of county voters renewed this past November. Another strategy is, as Commissioner Simpson was talking at length, buying the development rights on farmland through programs like the Rural and Family Lands Protection Program. Commissioner Simpson mentioned that $250 million was included for that purpose in the budget that the legislature approved a week ago. It's going to the governor, and hopefully he will approve that. This is a very positive step for preserving agriculture in Florida. And an emerging possibility is paying farmers, compensating them for those ecosystem services that I mentioned that farmland provides. And finally, there is utilizing the community planning process to promote sustainable development, which is a core priority for us at 1,000 Friends of Florida. So one of the primary elements of sustainable development is accommodating growth using less land, leaving more land for agriculture and nature. It's important if you're absorbing 350,000 new residents a year, as the commissioner mentioned, that this kind of consideration is paramount. As you can see from these examples, it's possible through good urban planning to leave 50% of an area or even 80% of an area in open space while accommodating the same population. Here from our Agriculture 2070 report are three key maps. The one on the left shows a 2019 baseline of developed land and protected land in Florida. The red parts of the map correspond to development. The map in the middle is the sprawl scenario for 2070, which assumes Florida absorbs that additional 12 million people, but remains on the current trajectory for growth, the current density in Florida for growth. And the map on the right is the conservation scenario for 2070, where Florida grows at a modest 20% higher density and rules out development on high-priority natural and agricultural land. If Florida achieves the conservation scenario, we will save about 800,000 agricultural acres compared to the sprawl scenario, while still accommodating the same population growth. There's no difference between the middle map and the one on the right in terms of the population growth. It's just how we plan for that population growth. So now I'll tighten the focus to Lake County, where the population is projected to have nearly doubled from the 2019 baseline we used to 2070. And this will not come as a surprise, this rate of growth, because it's already, as we know, grown substantially from that 2019 baseline. So here's what the baseline for Lake County and its two 2070 scenarios look like. As you can see, there is a lot more developed land in that sprawl scenario, the business as usual scenario, compared with the scenario on the right, the conservation scenario. And again, the conservation scenario is a modestly higher density rate and ruling out development on high priority natural and agricultural land. So the numbers lay out the extent of this. Under the sprawl scenario, developed land increases by more than 180,000 acres in Lake County, and agricultural areas plummet by more than 3/4 from 123,000 acres on the baseline down to just 29,000 or a little less than 29,000 by 2070 under the sprawl scenario. But under the conservation scenario, with the same population growth, there are 74,000 fewer acres lost to development compared to the sprawl scenario. And the loss of agricultural land is not nearly as steep. It's a little over half from the 2019 baseline to about 62,000 acres. So the question is, what can governments like those in Lake County do to come closer to the conservation scenario by 2070 than the sprawl scenario? Through a thoughtful land use planning process, they can steer new development away from prime agricultural land, as well as from priority natural lands and vulnerable areas like floodplains and wetlands. Through their comprehensive plans and land development regulations, they can promote infill and redevelopment and gradual growth outward from urban areas instead of leapfrog sprawl into rural areas. More compact development in urban areas not only reduces the development pressure on agricultural areas, it's also more fiscally sustainable and taxpayer friendly. It generates more tax revenue per acre, makes existing public services more efficient, and lessens the need to extend them. So I always say, even if you don't care about the environment or farming, but you care about keeping a lid on your taxes, you should be interested in more compact, urban-oriented development wherever possible, and where it makes sense for local neighborhoods. I'm not talking about high-rise buildings in historic neighborhoods, for example, or using up limited urban green space. It's about striking the right balance. Local government leaders and planners also need to keep in mind that development patterns that fragment farmland may deprive the agricultural sector of the critical mass it needs to maintain to be economically viable. Local planning that doesn't keep the future of agriculture in mind can lead to the end of local farming. But good public policy, planning, and land management can sustain agriculture and its many benefits for the environment and the economy for the long term. So, to sum up, here are some strategies to secure the future of agriculture in Lake County and throughout Florida. Utilize federal, state, and local funding sources to purchase development rights and preserve working farms. Steer growth and development toward urban areas and away from rural areas. Utilize science to identify high priority land for protection and the effective management of it. Design and fund programs to compensate farmers for the ecosystem services they provide. That's a heavy lift and probably more realistic at the state level than at the local level, obviously. And if anybody would like to dig deeper into the subjects I've summarized in my brief presentation today the work we've done with our partners at the University of Florida. Here are some places online where you will find more information. And with that, I'm happy if anybody has any questions to do my best.
All right. Any questions from the board?
Do y'all have funding available for us to help purchase property?
Yeah, and unfortunately, we are a small member-supported organization. I've got 6 people who work for me, even though we're statewide. What we can do is, first of all, we endorsed the Lake Forever initiative last November and helped promote it through our platforms. We can help connect local governments that are interested in funding sources with those funding sources. We're happy to work with you as a resource, but we don't have our own funding to provide for governments.
Thank you.
Sure.
I got a question. It's a technical question.
Sure.
Thanks for coming.
Sure.
So when we want to, the commissioner talked about buying development rights, which I think we should do. I talked about it in an earlier meeting. We have $50 million. I think that's the best bang for the buck. There's other lands that some are going to want to advocate. We just buy. Be simple. My question is, and Commissioner Smith kind of touched on it with his questions, is, you're looking at all this land, and there's some have more development rights than others. Yeah. Do you find it to be the case in a lot of counties where you're going to a landowner and you're saying, hey, I'll buy your development rights before you get them? Or is it, okay, this terrible municipality has given this privileged piece of land enormous overdevelopment rights, right, and now we're trying to come in with a fire extinguisher and be like, okay, please don't do that. We'll buy the rights back when you don't ruin this part of the county, and whatever, and buy it after the fact. So are the sales occurring before or sort of after they're getting it? Let me frame it just one other way, just because it explains the instance I'm talking about. Somebody's like, I'm going to go, I own this land, I'm going to push to get development rights, unless you want to come buy them from me to begin with. And should we do that because that's a better price than waiting, and then a municipality grants them, annexes them, grants them, and then we have to come in as the county and try to buy those rights back? Kind of, what's your thoughts on that situation?
Yeah, I think it makes a lot more sense at the front end before they have, before they've been zoned for dense development. It's less expensive. It's more forward-thinking, works better with long-term planning. I think there are other tools that can be utilized for the second scenario that you mentioned, like transfer of development rights. But that's a complex situation that I think a lot of smart people are working on, because that system doesn't always work the way people hope for it. But the short answer is it's much more effective to go in before there's those dense development rights.
And if I could just do one follow-up. So is it unusual, for example, for a county who's approved this sort of program to have this money and to look and to see a piece of land that a municipality has already given them all these rights, and to say, I know they're going to ask us for an arm and a leg, but we really don't want that to happen because it'll ruin that whole part of the county. Yeah. And so do counties do that with these types of programs, or is it just like, okay, sorry, that one's gone. They already have their apartments coming in. We're not even going to touch that. Yeah. Let's go look over here on the outskirts and quieter areas.
I think that happens less just because of the price. $50 million is a great investment, but it is most valuable as a tool to leverage state funding, private funding from groups like the Nature Conservancy, and federal funding from the National Resources Conservation Service. And so I think local governments have to be really smart stewards of their limited funds and go for the biggest bang for their buck.
Okay, question?
Well, I guess a comment and a question, and maybe an answer or some comment to Commissioner Sabatini's. But first of all, thank you again. Great presentation. For all of you that don't know, the lecture series that you do every other Wednesday, I believe, or at least a couple times a month, is amazing. And so I encourage everybody to go, and it's so easy to do. You just sign up for it. It's free, and you can listen to it wherever, where you cover all kinds of topics like this in your advocacy. So thank you very much for doing that. I think the answer to maybe the question or part of it to Commissioner Sabatini's very good question is, you know, the good news is we have data, we have science and data in place already through that conservation strategy document. That was a mapping, high level with UF and Stetson, as well as public input. It wasn't just sort of geeks in the back room. It was a lot of public input as well. So I think the good news is we already know where a lot of those lands are that we need to perhaps pursue now, before it does become more of a circus, if you will, out there. So I think we know that it's there. And then to the cities, it's like, can you get the cities now to start using the data that we have, the strategy document as part of a JPA, or at least have them adopt it, and they can see this. Then they know, okay, these are some of the highest priority areas that we need to protect. And as much as we're seeing some shocking cases recently of ag lands being lost, there's more perhaps that are even on that could be on a higher priority list. So that's what that conservation strategy document does, is it allows a process to prioritize because we only have so much money available. But to your point about the partnership and, you know, leveraging, that's the beauty of the 50 million, is maybe it turns out to be 150 million by the time you leverage it. So I don't know if there was a question or more of a comment, but I obviously I thank you for what you're doing, and I guess I would ask again about TDRs. I think you said you know some that work, but be careful. I mean, do you have any other thoughts about TDRs, transfer development rights, for us, how it could fit into helping us get some of these lands?
Yeah, my understanding of TDRs is there are some programs around the country that have been very successful, and I think those are models, if you're interested in pursuing that, to look to them for best practices. So I just think it's a complex market-oriented undertaking, and if the market changes, it may change the success of the program. But I would look to some of those, and we've got information about it online, of some of those other states that have successful programs. There's a successful program apparently in Maryland, I think in Montgomery County, Maryland, that has worked well.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you again.
Can we go back to that slide where you showed the 2070 Lake County, the comparison between the sprawl model versus the, there you go.
Yeah.
I mean, it's subtle in some ways when you look at the 2070 sprawl versus conservation, but if you study it enough, you can start to pick up on where those locations might be that land was conserved. A lot of it looks like down in the Green Swamp, but we've already got Green Swamp.
This looks like a slanderous attack on my, I'm kidding, but.
District 1.
I will not be voting for that.
Well, the Green Swamp area of critical state concern already has significant limitations on higher densities. And then over on the northeast side, we have the Wekiwa Protection Area, and we've got the Ocala National Forest, and so I see some increases in the sprawl model of red out there. I'm just kind of curious how, when you all did this modeling, did you take into account those limitations that already exist in those two areas, the Wekiwa Protection Area and the Green Swamp?
Right, and to clarify, the University of Florida Center for Landscape Conservation Planning did the modeling, and we packaged it and have been circulating it. But I'm sure that this is extracted from a statewide report. It's not a parcel by parcel. And also, one of the things I tell folks is these are projections. They're not predictions. Mm-hmm. But there's some basic criteria that they used for the likelihood of land being developed in terms of things like its proximity to highways, its proximity to other development, its the extent of wetlands on the property, because wetlands are obviously more expensive. It's more expensive to develop if you have to deal with wetlands. So I assume that they weighted those factors along with the other factors that they consider.
Mm-hmm. And it looks like in that best case scenario under the conservation model, you end up with 36% developed of the land versus under the sprawl 46% developed.
And that is because when you absorb the kind of population increase, I mean, you're gonna lose a lot of land to development regardless. But if you develop at a higher density, you'll lose less land. And 20% is a pretty modest increase in density. We're not talking about doubling density. 20% is in a lot of neighborhoods probably wouldn't even be noticed that much.
Mm-hmm. And knowing that, I mean, a lot of the county, on our future land use map, we have rural and rural transition lands that surround most of our municipalities as you go away from the urbanized areas. So I'm just, thinking about all the things that were said today about coordinating with the cities. It seems like in a clustered development model where you're trying to concentrate density and save green spaces, that those areas could be the prime locations for trying to do more of a conservation designed development model, if that's where the cities in fact are going to expand and grow their boundaries. Ideally, they wouldn't expand and grow their boundaries there. They would concentrate on infill and stay within those urban areas where they've already sort of mapped out where they intend to be. But if they were to go out, the conservation design would be the better scenario.
Yeah, and a conservation subdivision design is another one of the tools that local governments can do to minimize the land loss. And it frankly makes more sense as you build out from urban areas than it does, on the fringes of urban areas rather than kind of in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
Far from urban cores.
And that goes hand in hand with what you said about keeping your agricultural areas intact and not bifurcating them, because once you start to bifurcate them, then you make it less likely for the ag to be able to survive.
Exactly.
All right, any other questions? Excellent, appreciate you being here today.
Thank you, I appreciate the opportunity.
I'm probably going to massacre this name, but I'm going to give it a try. Dr. Pilardi? Got it. All right. With UF IFAS, we're going to talk about state and federal programs available to farmers in Florida. And we appreciate you're with the School of Food and Resources Economics, right?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, that is correct, and I think that's the first time my name has been pronounced perfectly in a
right.
Years coming to present. So thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today and present in front of the board and all of the audience here. This is a topic that is of great personal as well as professional interest to me. I grew up in Oconee County, Georgia, which was once a rural county. My route to school was entirely lined by cow pasture grazing land all the way You really wouldn't know that now. It has been entirely infilled with grocery stores, subdivisions, doctor offices, strip malls, you name it. You cannot find the agricultural land except for what the University of Georgia, sorry, shouldn't mention that here, but except for the land that they own within the county. So this is a topic of great interest to me, and is something that came up in working with the Florida Farm Bureau. You know, they approached my department, Food and Resource Economics Department. I'm an extension economist within that department, and they asked us to produce a brochure for landowners in Florida, mostly farmers, to help them navigate the complex web of agricultural conservation easement programs. Because there's a lot of farmers in the state that want to conserve their agricultural land, but it is a hurdle to familiarize yourself with all of the programs and policies in place that regulate it, and where are you going to get the best offer, which program should you apply for, what land trusts do you partner with, what does it mean to have an agricultural conservation easement on your land. So I created a brochure with Florida Farm Bureau, developed it over the course of a year, looking at federal, state, and local policies that are in place to incentivize farmers to place agricultural conservation easements on their land. And this brochure is available now online. It's available through the Florida Farm Bureau. If you want a PDF copy of it, please contact me. I'm more than happy to provide that. I'll provide my email at the end. Of course, I forgot my business card because I never bring them with me. They sit in my office. But please just reach out to me or Florida Farm Bureau, and I'll make sure to get a copy of that to you. But with that, starting with going back to that question earlier, what is an agricultural conservation easement? It's a less than fee acquisition. Well, what's a less than fee acquisition? We've talked about this a little bit already. It's not buying a property outright. It is purchasing the underlying development rights while the landowner retains ownership of the property. So I used to be a TA back in a previous lifetime for an ag law class. And the way that the teacher explained this, she's an ag attorney, and she would say, think of your property rights as a bundle of wood. And you can separate out the different rights that you have attached to your property and sell those individually. I was in Colorado at the time, so you would be able to sell your water rights on the private market there. Here, what you can do is you can separate out your development rights and retain the rest of your property rights. And that is what you're doing when you're selling a conservation easement. The landowner retains the underlying ownership of the underlying property. They're just taking out that stick, which is the development rights. We've talked about this a little bit too. In order to be a conservation easement, the owner is compensated, and that takes away the development right in perpetuity. It has to be in perpetuity. Otherwise, the IRS doesn't recognize it, and it's no longer, and you just get hit with taxes as though there's no easement in place. So it has to be in perpetuity. Otherwise, it's not recognized as a conservation easement. Most importantly, it's entirely voluntary. So you must have a willing seller and a willing buyer. You must have an agency, a department, a land trust that is willing to buy and purchase and hold the conservation easement, and you have to have a landowner that is willing to sell it. It can't be forced upon either party. So what are the benefits of selling a conservation easement or selling your development rights? I'm an economist, so I like to separate these out into private and public benefits. Private benefits includes tax incentives. If a farmer or rancher decides to donate or sell their development right below fair market value, they can get a tax break, and that can roll over onto multiple years, depending on how much of a donation that they are making. They get a break in the form of property taxes because it lowers the value of the property because you're selling a piece of the property or you're selling a component that would increase the value of the property, so that lowers its value and they are now taxed less. And conservation easements are also often part of a estate planning process. So if you want to pass your land on to your heirs, but you don't want to burden them with a large inheritance tax burden, what you can do is you can place a conservation easement on that land. Again, because that is lowering the overall value, you are not burdening your heirs with as big of a tax burden as it otherwise would be. These programs often also come with technical assistance. We talked about BMPs. In order to enroll in these programs, the agricultural activity on the land has to follow BMPs. And a lot of these programs offer technical assistance so that you can be in compliance with that. As well as cost sharing for whatever it takes to get that land, either remediation or to get it to the point where it can function under those BMPs. Thanks. So that way, that's one of the benefits that landowners get when working with conservation easement organizations that give out conservation easements. Shouldn't say give, that purchase conservation easements. And then finally, control over legacy. We talked a lot about development in rural areas, and farmers, they want to keep that rural character for their children and their grandchildren. I talk with landowners a lot, and that seems to be a big concern there as well. They want the children to have the same quality of life, to experience the same things that they grew up in, their grandchildren and their grandchildren's children, to have that same opportunity. And by putting a conservation easement on their land, that can ensure that it stays in agricultural production, and for generations, that legacy remains in place. So there are public benefits as well. From a county perspective, it is a way to manage urban and suburban sprawl. We talked earlier about the cost of extending services. That is a big expenditure when you have this rapid growth and pressure the development pressure that is on a lot of counties here in Florida. It can also help maintain a critical mass of agriculture, which is something that has been brought up a lot today. Agricultural supply chains really rely on a critical mass of agricultural activity in an area. And when you have processors and packaging facilities located in an area, if that critical mass is no longer there, they'll have to leave and move elsewhere. And when that happens, it becomes less economically viable to farm in that area, which causes a further reduction in farming, which causes more of the agricultural supply chain to leave. It can really create a negative feedback loop if you lose a critical mass of agriculture. And so agricultural conservation easements can really help preserve and ensure that your county does not lose that critical mass so that agriculture remains an economically viable industry within the county. Again, preserving agricultural heritage at the county level, wanting that you want the county to be a pleasant place that has that rural character that you grew up experiencing, and you don't want that to change. Counties are faced with this decision of, okay, how do we manage growth? We want to improve the economic well-being of our constituents, but we don't necessarily want all of the ailments that comes along with development. So agricultural conservation easements can be part of that balancing act of, you don't want to stand in the way of economic development, but you don't want to trade your agricultural character for that economic development. Providing open space as well. And then we talked about wildlife habitat, species corridors, spring recharge. Conservation easements provide all of these benefits as well. So I got my degree at Colorado State University in agricultural economics, and there was a study that Colorado State did that focused on landowners who started the process of acquiring an agricultural conservation easement on their land and then backed out of it, because they wanted to know, why did landowners back out of getting a conservation easement after being interested in it? And what the study found is that often the expectations of landowners going into it did not align with the reality of it. So these are some of the considerations when, as a county, if you choose to develop your own agricultural conservation easement program, these are some things that you can convey to landowners up front at the beginning so that they are aware of when they're engaging with this process of what to expect. So one is that the process tends to be lengthy. This is true even with the Rural Family Lands Protection Program, which, not to brag, but it is one of the flagship agricultural conservation easement programs in the entire country. No state has a program quite like Florida's, and I don't think any state has conserved as many acres through a state program as much as Florida has. It's really one of a kind and is a model for the rest of the country. But even that program, the process is lengthy. It's a 1 to 2 year process. It's not like selling your house, which can happen in less than 2 months. It's a 1 to 2 year process. Landowners apply to the program. The top candidates are selected. The county sends out an assessor, a surveyor. They test the soil. They look at the history of agriculture that has taken place on that land. The private landowner also brings out an assessor. You negotiate on a price. You try to find cost-sharing matches to come together on a make a deal. And when you get through all that, it's been a year or two. So that's just something to know up front. The process is complex. Again, being a TA for an ag law class, I can't stress enough how important it is to get legal and technical assistance. These application processes, especially if you're going to engage with some of the federal programs that I'll talk about later in this presentation, they're pretty complex. And when you're applying to these programs and you want to make your application the most competitive as possible as a landowner, you're going to want to engage experts who can speak the language and can work within and who know the system that they're working within. So I highly encourage both the county and landowners to work with ag lawyers that specialize in agricultural conservation easements. The process is competitive. So I think Commissioner Simpson mentioned earlier there were over 300 applications to the RFLPP this year. Not all of these applications are going to be selected, and part of making a competitive application, again, is having the technical assistance that'll let you word things, highlight the most attractive features of that property to that specific program, and just making sure that you check all the boxes in terms of qualifying and that you do all the paperwork, get everything submitted on time. And finally, funding is cyclical and subject to change. This is one of the biggest ones when you're talking to landowners about, agricultural conservation easements. A big concern, and this is a very, very important and valid concern, is, well, what if the property value goes up 2 to 3 years, 5 years from now? I'm not going to miss out on that revenue if I sell a conservation easement now. And that is absolutely a risk. It's uncertainty. However, trying to time the market itself is risky, but also program funding fluctuates. It may not be as well funded next year, or it may be a more competitive application next year. So these are things that also need to be taken into account. This is more on the landowner side. When you're applying to this, you don't only need to be concerned about the property values, but another concern is also, what about funding for the program? How likely is my application going to be accepted this year? Is it going to be more competitive down the road? Is the program funding even going to, at the federal level, is the program going to be available at all next year? It might not exist. So these are things to consider when you're thinking about applying to conservation easement programs. So now I'm going to run through some conservation easement programs that really are focused on preserving agriculture. But we've talked about all this quickly, so I'll go through it without taking too much time to leave room for questions. So starting with the RCPP program, this program is designed to prevent ag land from being converted to non-agricultural uses. That is the mission of this. And this program is a bit unique in that rather than buying conservation easements outright directly from landowners, what they do is they provide funding to projects managed by lead partners. And those lead partners are either government or land trust. In Florida, they're all land trust. And the projects all have distinct geographic boundaries. I'll put a map up here in a little bit that'll have those boundaries for where the 6 RCPP projects are and their lead partners in the state. But each project has its own objectives. Some of those objectives are more permissible in terms of what type of agricultural activities they'll allow. So projects that are focused on habitat corridors and wildlife corridors, those are going to be more permissible. They're going to allow more types of agriculture, whereas ones that may be more focused on spring recharge, those might be more concerned about pesticide, nutrient application. They may be more restrictive about the type of agricultural activities that they're willing to allow on land that they're going to purchase a conservation easement of. So it's really important for landowners to consider what the goals and objectives of the lead partners are, and whether their land management objectives align with those goals. By the way, for each program, these slides will be made available to anyone that wants them. I've included a link at that button that's at the bottom. You can click on that, go directly to that program's website, and learn more about it. So RCPP has 6 active projects in Florida spanning 28 counties. 3 of those include Lake County. So those bottom 3, the Ocala to Osceola, the Lake to the Lagoon, and Corridor to Coast. Those 3 all overlap Lake County in the northeast corner, which you can see on this map. So there are potentially landowners in this state who could qualify or apply to be to get to place a conservation easement on their land from the lead partners for any of these three programs. And the three lead partners for these programs are the North Florida Land Trust, the Alachua Conservation Trust, and the North Florida Land Trust and the Alachua Conservation Trust. Both of those land trusts, by the way, have preserving agriculture and working lands as one of their primary objectives. I'll talk more about land trust at the end if I have time, but when you're selecting a land trust to work with, it's really important to make sure that that land trust prioritizes preserving working agricultural lands, because there's all kinds of land trusts out there. So there's also at the federal level the ACEP ALE, which ACEP stands for Agricultural Conservation Easement Program. ALE stands for Agricultural Land Easements. The primary objective of this program is, again, to prevent the conversion of ag land to non-ag uses. Unlike the previous program, this one works directly with landowners, but also with state agencies. It's primarily a cost-sharing option. So if a landowner wants to apply for for a conservation easement through the Rural Family Lands Protection Program, ACEP ALE might step in and say, hey, we'll cover 20%, 30, 50% of the cost to acquire that conservation easement. That way the RFLPP or a county program can stretch its dollars further. This is really designed to just really help state and local programs get the most out of their money by sharing the cost of acquiring these easements. So that's something that working with the ACEP ALE program might be something the board would consider down the road. Allowable land uses, again, they're broadly focused on preserving agricultural land, preventing it from being converted to non-ag uses, so they allow a lot of types of agriculture. They do require that applicants' land that goes into this program meet at least one of the following requirements, but these are pretty easy to check off. Further a state or local policy consistent with the purpose of ACEP ALE. If you qualify for the RFLPP, you check off that requirement. Or if there's a county program in place and the landowner qualifies for it, they check off that box. Or 50% of agricultural land be prime unique, protect grazing uses or related conservation values, or contain historical or archaeological resources. Other requirements in order to cost share with this program is that the average adjusted gross income of the landowner be less than $900,000 for the previous 3 years. This is because they primarily target small and medium agricultural operations, because those are the ones that tend to be most at risk for conversion to non-agricultural uses. Again, compliant with USDA's conservation requirements for highly erodible land, BMPs. Make sure that they're following BMPs. Farm records established with the FSA. This is something that county extension agents can help farmers with if that's an issue. And then written pending offer from an eligible partner. So this would be an offer from either a program at the county level or the RFLPP or a land trust lead partner through the RCPP. I'm throwing a lot of abbreviations. Sorry, that's, man. Yeah, you work in UF-IFAS, you throw around a lot of abbreviations, so let me know if anything's confusing. Okay, so state programs, it's been talked a lot about all day. I'm not going to talk too much more about it. It's an amazing program, Rural Family Lands Protection Program. Unlike the previous two programs, it focuses on directly acquiring and holding conservation easements from landowners. And it is available to a lot of different types of agricultural activity. Some requirements, it must protect agricultural land threatened by conversion. So say that the county extends services by a plot of land, that land suddenly becomes a lot more attractive to development. That could qualify it for as being threatened by conversion. Or the parcel beside this was just sold to a developer. That makes that adjacent parcel much more likely to be converted. So that checks that box. Or it could perpetuate open space on lands with significant natural areas, protection and enhanced natural bodies, spring recharge, aquifer recharge, that type of ecosystem service, and then promotion and improvement of wildlife habitat. The RFLPP does have a prioritization matrix that it uses to rank properties. Ranch and timberland that is managed sustainably following BMPs gets priority. parcels that perpetuate the viability of ongoing ag operations. This comes down to size. The larger the parcel, the more that it's going to perpetuate the ongoing viability, economic viability of ag operations. A 10-acre parcel, that's great, but if you can conserve 500 acres, that does much more to preserve the economic viability of agriculture than the 10 acres in most situations. Parcels that are most at risk for conversion get priority. Parcels that protect natural areas, and projects that are eligible for cost sharing. RFLPP loves to make its dollars go as far as they can. So if it can cost share with a county program, if it can cost share with a federal program, if it can cost share with all three, that's the trifecta, that's great. You're going to get a lot of bang for your buck doing that. Florida Forest Legacy Program, this is very similar to the RFLPP, but for silviculture, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that. Florida Forever, this is different from the RFLPP or the Florida Forest Legacy Program. That's because the previous two are run out of FDEX. The Florida Forever is run out of FDEP. FDEP is much more focused on conservation in general, but one of the primary objectives of them that they have for the Florida Forever program is the protection of working landscapes. So even though it's not specifically focused exclusively on agriculture, the goals may align in certain cases. If you have properties in the county that are located in wildlife corridors or sensitive spring recharge areas that are adjacent to existing protected areas, or that provide flood protection to developed areas, that land could be eligible for cost sharing with the Florida Forever program. Again, they're going to be more restrictive about the type of agricultural practices they allow, though, just because they are focused more broadly on conservation. So this was something that was pretty new to me. I was unaware that there were county agricultural conservation easement programs until I started working with Florida Farm Bureau on this project. And I was able to identify 6 across the state. The Alachua County Forever Agricultural Land Conservation Strategy is probably the newest one. It was passed by the board earlier this year, and it is the only program whose primary objective is the protection of agricultural land. But this just helps organize, this chart just helps you kind of conceptually organize these conservation easement programs, because at the county level, these programs vary a lot in terms of their funding, their scope, their mission, how they rank the properties that apply to them. But there are existing examples in Florida of counties with agricultural conservation easement programs that if Lake County wanted to look at them and maybe learn some of the lessons from them, or say, oh, that's a model program that we would like to look at, all of their conservation matrix, for example, how they rank properties, all of that is available. If you're having trouble finding it, reach out to me. I'm more than happy to share that. But I tried to organize them based on how much they prioritized the conservation of ag land, as well as what types of agriculture were allowed under each program. So you can see that the Alachua County Forever is the only one that has conservation of ag land in its primary objective. Compare that to the Indian River County Environmental Lands Program. This one is a little bit interesting because the protection of ag land is listed as one of several objectives, but it doesn't appear at all in their ranking matrix. When you look at their ranking matrix, there's economic values, there's social concerns, there's environmental values. Agriculture is not mentioned anywhere. So it's just one of those things where it can be an objective, but if you don't put it in the weighting of how you're ranking properties, how likely is it that an ag land is going to come to the top of that prioritization? So that's just an example of how different counties have gone about it, and I'm more than happy to provide more information on any one of these if there's any questions on that. And finally, with land trusts, just real quick, are community-based nonprofit organizations that work to permanently conserve land. Land trusts can be local, state, or regional in scope, and they work directly with private landowners as well as state and local governments and federal governments to protect land, and some focus primarily on agricultural land. The way I like to describe it for landowners is once you start working with a land trust, that land trust is going to be the one that holds oftentimes the agricultural conservation easement, especially if you're working with the RCPP. And if you go that route, think of it like a marriage. And when you marry someone, you're going to want to make sure that they hopefully hold the same values and have the same objectives as you do. So this is a agreement that is even going to outlive you. So you want to make sure when you're establishing and you're negotiating that conservation easement that your objectives, your goals, your values all align. So land trusts come in many different flavors. So I came up with this chart. These presentation will be made available. These are all of the land trusts that have been certified by the Land Trust Alliance as they basically are the gold standard. If you're a member of the Land Trust Alliance, you're a trustworthy land trust. You are trustworthy, and they encourage people to work with these certified land trusts. The ones that have stars beside them on this chart are ones that list protecting agriculture as one of their primary objectives. And then I have all the counties that they operate in. So, for example, the Alachua Conservation Trust is active in Lake County. The American Farmland Trust is active in all counties. That's a national one, so they're a little bit harder to get funding from just because they operate at a national level and they're more of a networker where they'll tie you to local land trust, but they are spread all over the country and they don't have a whole lot of money to allocate towards individual projects. But groups like the Alachua Conservation Trust or the North Florida Land Trust, those are the ones that are going to be cost sharing and providing some of the money for agricultural conservation easements. All right, so I think I spoke fast enough for everybody. I hope that's clear as mud. This guide is available online, but we've been having technical difficulties. So if you have trouble accessing it, just email me. I'm more than happy to provide a PDF of the document if you're having trouble getting to it. With that, thank you for your time. If you have questions, please feel free to contact me. If you need me to go back to the prior slide, I'm happy to do that too. Just let me know.
Great information. Commissioner Barks, you have a question?
Just real quick, because I know there might be other questions and a little more discussion, but thank you very much. Appreciate you, Dr. Pilardi, and love UF-IFAS and the benefit to help us shape policy here in Lake County and all around Florida. Just real quick with the land trust, you just touched on that. Just my opinion, how important that is. I don't know if you could put that slide back up there, but the Alachua, if not, no biggie. But the Alachua Conservation Trust, so about 4 years ago, I was like really, really getting into all this, and I was ready to just like go out and start my own trust. I was a little naive, but I was told, no, you need to go and work with Alachua. So I will put the plug in for us as we move forward. They're great for us, as well as American Farmland Trust, which I've met at the Florida Wildlife Corridor. So that is a key part, and the key part to emphasize that is they have money so they can shorten the time frame for those in ag that want lands to be preserved. Instead of waiting years for money to show up, they can bridge that gap. So I just think emphasize that is going to be really important for us, is to get to go with Alachua personally, and maybe American Farmland as well. But there's others; they're all good. But so I don't know, more of an opinion, I guess, anything other than to say thank you, and I look forward to getting a copy of this presentation. I thought it had a lot of good information in it.
Absolutely, and I can provide some copies of the brochure for landowners to the county, to Lake County, as well as for the interested landowners here. I'm sorry I wasn't unable to print out any to bring with me today to the meeting, but we can provide those, and we'll also have them available through our local extension office here. So
yeah, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Awesome, great information, and we're going to move into a panel discussion. Meg Brew, Executive Director of Development Services. Actually, I think it's Kathleen. Did I say Meg? I meant to say Kathleen.
I'm a sad stand-in for Meg, but I am who you get today, so.
Well, we're happy that you're here to do this and moderate a short panel discussion with local leaders in agriculture. So we're going to let you take it from here and get this.
Yeah, for the record, Kathleen Dahl, Executive Director of Development Services for Lake County. And I know we've thrown a lot of information at you today to digest, but we didn't want to end without letting you hear from some local farmers and leaders in agriculture. So it's my privilege today to welcome Ryan Atwood, if you'll come on up, Tom Frost, and Austin Spivey. three outstanding members of the Lake County Ag community, and as you heard in the FFA Creed so beautifully put, these men truly know the joys and discomforts of agricultural life. We have a few questions to help begin the conversation. So gentlemen, if you would first, please introduce yourself and share what you enjoy the most about working in agriculture.
Austin Spivey. I work with Cherry Lake in South Lake County, Groveland. I came into agriculture about 11 years ago, and one of the things I did not anticipate, I love the idea of having that farm as my office. Beautiful rolling landscape, lakes, sunrises, the whole thing. The one thing I didn't anticipate was the quality of the people that I get to be involved with every day in ag. Some of the most humble, hardworking, high-integrity people I've ever encountered. So that's probably what I love most about agriculture is the people I get to surround myself with.
My name's Tom Frost. Got into agriculture about 12 years ago. Our farm is a cattle ranching operation. We do cow-calf and some backgrounding of beef cattle. And then we're a horse farm. So we raise quarter horses, raise about 30-year trained 2-year-old cutting horses, and sell them out at the Western Bloodstock sale in Texas. So the best thing about agriculture for me is I get to work with my kids. I've got 3 kids, my oldest 2, an 8-year-old and 10-year-old. They work with us every day. They homeschool. So we're on the farm together. We've got a great team. Our team is eclectic. We've got guys from South America, guys from Europe, guys from Alabama. So we have the whole mix, and it's a good place to work and a great place for my kids to grow up. And I get to pretend like I'm a kid every day. So can't ask for a better life than that.
I'm Ryan Atwood, one of the owners of H&A Farms. I was a city kid growing up, not from agricultural background. Worked for Lake County as an agricultural extension agent for fruit crops. Fell in love with the people, much like Austin did. I found the people to be excellent, high quality, just wanted to be around them. Saw some opportunities to start my own blueberry operation. Partnered with the Hill family, great people. We started a packing house, and Michael Hill, who's the CEO, has grown it into, I believe it's the largest packing house in the eastern United States, if not the whole country now, for blueberries. So it's been pretty successful. And just really the people is what got me interested in it.
Thank you. And we know that there are plenty of challenges, even with the resources available to farmers. There are challenges that can make farming difficult. Severe weather, foreign competition, pest diseases, and labor-related issues have all been cited as challenges for farmers. In your professional experience, what have you found to be the greatest challenge to farming for productivity and profitability?
Probably, and I can only speak for our operation, probably labor is the greatest challenge for us because we're very specialized and labor intensive in our farming. I think it takes one person per 5 acres for a whole year to perform all the different tasks. And we have 720 acres, so that's like 143 people we have to employ just to produce the crop. Doesn't get it to market, doesn't get it to the loading dock, any of that stuff, doesn't sell it. And so labor's been a challenge. We're innovative, we mechanize, we automate as much as we can, but yeah, labor's been a challenge for us. We engage in some of the federal programs, H2 programs. They've been wonderful to us. They're antiquated and they probably need a little bit of updating. I think 1984 is when they were rolled out, and I don't think there's been a single update to those programs since then, which is absurd. That's 40 years. There wasn't even the internet when those were implemented, right? So there's probably some things, some opportunity there, but it's a political hot stove, and so we haven't gotten a lot of traction there. But yeah, to be brief, labor is the biggest challenge, and more specifically, domestic labor. Being able to hire and recruit domestic labor has been a significant challenge for us.
Ours is a bit different. Ours is land. We raise beef cattle, and the only way you can make money and raise beef cattle is for them to graze. And the only way you get more way to graze is more land. And at one point in time, we had 1,500 mama cows, and we were on 19 leases spread from Kenansville, Florida, all the way up to Graceville, Florida, which probably driving, that's probably a 8-hour drive between those spots. And we really cut ourselves down a lot. Mayorkas just couldn't do it anymore, and we would lose leases, and so we'd lose money. We'd lose money to houses. We'd lose out to a guy who wanted to build houses. We'd lose out to a guy who wanted to build blueberries, blueberry fields. The worst possible, financial solution for a landowner is to have beef cattle on it. But probably the best environmental solution is beef cattle. Probably every neighbor wants beef cattle. It comes with its own set of problems. People who are bordering our property, even our main ranch in Lady Lake, we'll put down lime, which is just like spreading sand, and we put down lime, and our neighbors think we're trying to kill them with a chemical. It's not chemical, but that I see that for the big challenge for everybody else. But yeah, our biggest challenge really is land. I think people love the ranching life. We don't have a hard time getting really good talent to work with us. We got a great place to work, but we have way less people. I know your guys' challenge. I've been to your dormitory and all that stuff. It's a lot. But yeah, ours is it's land, and we have to buy at about $5,000 an acre to be able to do our job and make money at it. We'll buy for more than that. Obviously, we've been buying for more than that, but that means it's going to be a labor of love. So we do it. A lot of it's out of love. We definitely need more land and more access to land.
So this is a topic I could speak hours on, literally, but I don't want to take that much time for you guys because I know it's been long enough. But labor would be one, land would be one. Honestly, the rural-urban interface, which is very, much important to Lake County, is another. Just as an example, I get people every year that are not happy with me because I'm running my bird cannons or my bird squelchers, which legally we're allowed to do an hour after sunrise and an hour before sunset. We turn them off. But still, it doesn't matter to people who like to drink heavily and sleep into 11 a.m., and I turn on my cannons at 8:30. And then they send me literally 3-page long text messages that are just nastier than anything you've ever read. And then you have other neighbors come over and they want to fight you. And then you have neighbors come over when you have COVID because you're picking your crop and they don't understand why you've got 100 people in your field because you're supposed to be socially distancing. And then you've got police officers who work the night shift, and then they come home and they want to sleep in the day, and then they tell you every rule and law that you're breaking by having semis come to your property. And anyway, I'm just giving you small little tidbits over the years of things that we deal with. I've been in this office before when people have tried to get H-2A housing in this county. I've never seen so many pitchforks out before. And that's a legal program through the government. So there's a lot of challenges. We haven't even talked about environmental, hailstorms, things that happen. So it truly is a labor of love in a lot of ways. There are a ton of challenges, not only on the local level, but on the federal level. And so it's a very difficult profession. There's a lot of ways to lose money, to be honest. And I'm going to be brief. So.
Okay, and last question. In your interactions with colleagues across the country, have you come across local programs or initiatives that have been effective in helping individuals who want to continue farming profitably be able to do so? If so, could you share one?
Yeah, so one of the programs I encountered, so one of the things that didn't really get talked about today is there's a lot of wonderful programs to help put your land into perpetual green space, right? But the assumption that's made is that, well, I want to see my land continue to be farmed. But I think one of the big problems, and perhaps this dictates the decision-making a little bit, is succession planning. You know, that I think only 30% of agricultural operations make it to the next generation, right? So I think there's this big gap in succession planning because, you know, if I'm a guy that owns a swath of land, of course I want to see my labor of love preserved and all that, but do I take pennies on the dollar and then not have anyone to give it to see that through fruition, or do I take, you know, my 401k in full, so to speak, right? And so I think that's a challenge there. And so I would encourage anybody that's looking at developing programs for conservation to also consider the succession planning services. You know, specifically, there was a program in Colorado that I was made aware of in my time in Wedgeworth, and basically these guys had got together and they basically crowdsourced a bunch of aspiring farmers, got their resumes, got everything that you know, that made them credible, you know, in terms of being a potential employee. And then they looked at the aging farming population that didn't have a good succession plan. Their kids don't want to farm it. They don't want to take over. They live in urban areas. And they basically created a service to where they could match, you know, people that wanted to keep their land in agriculture and people that wanted to become farmers, you know, but the greatest barrier to entry is land, the cost of land, right? And so they were trying to put these two together, and I think that's a wonderful program. Again, the statistics show the farming population is aging. The amount of second and third generation farms is diminishing greatly, and you know, so there's this little gap there. And I think considering that gap and creating something, you know, to meet that need would go a long way.
So we're actually in the process of putting our land in through the Rural Family Lands program. We've submitted our application. It's a 90-page application that we filled out, and we're working with Dean Saunders and his group, J.T. Thompson, who's a local guy, grew up here. So that's what we're doing right now. So we're putting 512 acres in that program. There's a lot of negotiations. That's kind of one of the biggest things. It's just negotiating every little bit, what you can do with the land, how it could get subdivided into smaller farms. You know, if that was something, how many houses can get built over time. And so we're in the process of that. And that'll probably be for us, my wife and I, that's the generational change. So, you know, 500 plus acres of high and dry land in the area of Lady Lake where we are. I mean, it's development land that's really valuable. Just trying to make sure that we get enough that it makes it worthwhile. Because, you know, I think you get in there, and we've spoken to the Alachua Land Trust and Tom Kay and the guys over there, and really smart guys. But it's like you sit there with them, and a lot of times they're going like, okay, well, yeah, we'll give you like $2 million, and you're like, yeah, I'm 10 in, like thanks but no thanks. Like it went up, like it doubled. So for like $20 million, you're going to give me $2 million. Like that's probably not a good negotiation. There's not, and so I think that's the biggest challenge. But I think assembling the programs together is really important. I think finding a good partner is really, you know, I think, Dean Saunders has done a great job at it. They just know. And so I think anybody who's interested in it, I think, you know, not to, you know, represent them. We haven't finished ours yet, but there's so many pots of money. I learned a lot today, listening. And it looks like there's, you know, I'm sure that the Saunders guys know kind of how to navigate that, but that's the biggest part is kind of going to that. But that's going to be the biggest thing for my family to be able to continue to do this. I don't know what happens in the third generation. I don't know. My kids are pretty young. But, you know, I think when you're doing it, you hope that they'll do it. And if they're doing it every day, more than likely one of them's going to do it. So
I was negative with my last comment, but I'll be more positive this time. One of the good things about the urban-rural interface is you can do agritourism. And as most of you know, that I'm also an owner of an agritourism farm called Amber Brook Farms in Eustis. And as the population comes to you, you can successfully do that. And I know a lot of the growers that have agritourism towns in Lake County that have been very successful. Graham's up with their peaches, transitioned from a failing citrus operation into a very, successful peach you pick. Obviously, the Hill family down in Claremont is probably the poster child of all Florida agricultural ag tourism farms in the state, if not the top, one of the top. So I think there's an opportunity in that realm for our county. I still think there are more and more coming in, and there's competition, healthy, friendly competition. But I think that for our area, the future, that could be something that would be of benefit. So.
I just want to thank you all for your time and expertise, and really all of our speakers. We've had people travel from all over the state to come be with you today. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you for any questions or discussion.
You guys have questions? You want
to? I have a question, and it's probably for all of you, but since Mr. Frost is going through this process, would you say that if this process was less cumbersome, it would help bring down the price and get more people interested in going through this process?
I think that the time, we've been in it for over 18 months now, and we don't see, he said a year or two. I think you should probably say 3. That's a long time for anybody, especially a lot of farmers transition because of health issues. I think there needs to be somewhere that they can bridge loan it. You can bail a guy out. I mean, I was in a tractor this morning. I don't know about these guys, but I was in a tractor this morning. I'm hauling cows to the market tomorrow. If I had a real bad health issue, a developer can make me a deal tomorrow, and the time is the biggest problem.
Yeah, you were saying it was 90 pages, and I'm sure you have an attorney involved.
Yep.
So there's an expense there that's just absolutely, to me, is ridiculous that we can't streamline this process some way to. Are we listening back over here? We need to streamline this process a little bit so we can make it less cumbersome, because not all farmers have the resources that some of y'all have. I mean, we're talking some farmers here that are just barely hanging on, and they're wanting to continue farming, but they're not sure how to do it, or they're not sure how to go through the process.
Yeah.
So I think it's on us to get with the state and the federal level to figure out how to make this less cumbersome. So thank you for your remarks, though.
Commissioner, we'll come back to you.
Sure, yeah. No.
My question is more staff. The $50 million bond issue, will it allow us to go and use that money for the rural and family lands? I mean, the way it was written, can we parlay the money into making money?
Yeah, I don't have the language in front of me. At the time we developed that ordinance, the discussion of buying development rights really didn't come up. It is written that we would be acquiring interests in land. So a development right would be an interest in land. As y'all talk about, you picture that bundle of sticks, and that could be one of the sticks. So I think that's something we'd have to explore a little bit more as to whether it was intended to reach to that level.
And the other language, though, I know you don't have the language in front of you, but working off of memory, there was a lot of focus on, water quality, green spaces.
Correct. It was focused on water quality, green spaces. There is a section that does talk about acquiring property to protect against overdevelopment. That term is actually in there. So, but again, your initial discussions when we came up with that language wasn't so much as TDRs as much as it was to acquire property like you had done on the original issuance.
So we could acquire property, and if we wanted to get rid of the development rights, we have the property. Why could we not sell the property?
You can, but because it's a restricted funding source, of course, whatever the sale prices would go back into that fund. You have to be careful too, because these are tax exempt bonds. So there are some federal regulations where you have to be really, really careful about buying something immediately and then turning it around and selling it. Every time we look at selling one of the properties that we purchased in a previous issuance, we do go to our bond counsel and have them look at that and review it to make sure we're not violating any federal regulations.
And I think that's why Commissioner Simpson had said 2 to 3 years. I imagine there might be a time frame on that. We need to research that.
Correct. We'd have to look at the federal regs.
Where that might, to your point, where that might come into play is the 50 million, of course, with partnering with other agencies, is say you did have an agricultural piece of land, but there were some environmental features with it, associated with it, but it's a large tract of property, and there's agricultural operations going on one part of it, but then other parts have some environmental features, water resource protection, but the person that's in ag is wants to get rid of, sorry to put it that way, but the whole entire tract. So maybe the money goes towards more what's lined with the conservation strategy mapped lands, and then you marry it with Rural and Family Lands Protection Act money, and maybe you throw in somebody else, and you're wheeling and dealing, and that's how you can accomplish that, maybe.
My goal is to make the 50 million go as far as we can.
And
get
that's-
as much as we can.
Absolutely.
And if that means we can make money on the way through without hurting the bond, the bonding, I think we should look into it.
Commissioner Sabatini.
Sure. My question is, I mean, all three great farmers, thank you guys for being here. It seems to me like, Ryan, you're the most into agritourism, obviously, of the three, in my opinion. How do we expand agritourism, and how does the county partner with you or other operators on expanding? You know, people talk about economic development, and one of the big complaints they have is developing people to come in and compete against our local guys. I want the county to really partner with the stakeholders in the community to incentivize them to spread agritourism, or maybe take farms that make great money and are very profitable but don't have an agritourism sector and incentivize them to do that. I think that's, my opinion, the most economically viable way to keep ag high and growing, obviously viable, but also keep the quality and cultural, life. What are your thoughts on that? Do you have maybe a partnership? I mean, I'm just curious, what can we do from our side?
My initial reaction is I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I do think there's some things that, as an agricultural producer, that are more challenging in that business, because the truth is it's a different kind of business, right? Like, it's not just out there growing blueberries and dealing with my employees, and that's a totally different. You're dealing with the general public, you're outward facing, you need different skill sets. And a lot of times, my wife, for our small deal, when we started it, was perfect for that, because she's total extrovert and did a really good job with interacting with the folks. But then you have other challenges, maybe where you could help, like with traffic patterns. I mean, I went to our Easter egg hunt. I don't know, Leslie lives up nearby. She might have saw it, but I was like, oh my gosh, we back traffic up a mile. I was like, people are running on the dirt road, around the paved road. I'm just like, this is a nightmare, but it wasn't intended, obviously, right? But it's just one of those things where it was popular. People wanted to come to it. We've done it before, but we're not experts in how to deal with those kind of situations. So maybe that's where you could give assistance to people and help us with those kind of issues.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is just a thought going from Q&A to conversation here with the board. But just a thought I had is, obviously these are limited dollars, and we want to get development rights, and everyone's going to want to be, if they know they want to sell the development rights, they're going to be applying, and it's going to be competitive. I almost think there's a way to incentivize agritourism by tying it in legally into who gets, who we purchase from, in the sense that, okay, we'll purchase from people who are interested in doing good agritourism in our county. And proven operators can come, and it's like, okay, you guys already know what you're doing. You got great farms. You're going to get points, right, under the board to jump up, and then we literally buy development rights or buy land and let these guys operate it through, I guess it would be a separate legal agreement, to incentivize and increase agritourism as part of this conversation. I just think it's the best way to incentivize this healthy and good industry, which I think improves the culture, quality of life, and desirability to live in this county. And so it sounds like an aggressive approach, but it's just something to think about. That's all. I'm just sort of thinking in that regard of how we can really incentivize agritourism more than any of the other counties in Central Florida.
all good thoughts. Okay.
Yeah, two questions, I think, quick. The succession planning services, I think that's a great idea. I mean, wow, that could be really big. Are local banks involved with that in Colorado? Like if our local banks?
That I do not know.
Okay, because what I understand is it's for somebody that knows that it's not going to stay in my family, but I'm going to be sort of matched up with somebody that proves themselves to want to be.
Yeah, and I think one of the attractive things was, well, you know, it's wide open as far as what the arrangement could be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it could be, well, my family continues to own the land and we have a very lucrative lease offer for you and you profit off of it, right?
Yeah.
And so you're an owner-operator in the sense that you own the operation, but yet, you know, the family gets to keep. So they explained quite a few different arrangements that they had envisioned. And so, but I just think offering that service will bring more people to the table, right? Because the guy that's sitting there is like, my kids don't want anything to do with this. You know, I got all this land, it's worth a chunk, and basically I can take that, or I can, you know, get a diminished amount, a small amount that may hold me over, but then I have all this land to maintain that I'm getting too old to maintain. By giving them this third option of maybe putting them in touch with people, you know, that would aspire to maintain their land and to operate and to make a great living in agriculture. I think that's just a great incentive to bring more people to the table.
And is there any consumer decision that we could make like today that would support agriculture? Maybe a loaded question, but for all three of you, but.
Fresh from Florida?
Yeah, fresh. Okay, all right. I mean, going to a grocery store, I'm not going to mention names and things how they manipulate sometimes and stuff like that. But so fresh from Florida, that's what we as consumers should do.
I get frustrated myself because sometimes I could go 3 miles down the road and get a piece of fruit that's 3 days old, right? But yet on my grocery store shelf, you know, they're marketing the stuff that's 3,000 miles away and 3 months old. And it's really discouraging to see that. So I always hunt for the fresh from Florida label, and the produce manager in my grocery store, he knows me, and he's always ducking me because I'm always calling him out, like, what are you guys doing? You know? So, yeah, he's well aware. So.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for being here. We appreciate your input, and we look forward to hopefully working together and helping you continue to do what you do.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
For
All right.
Privilege. Thanks.
Bringing back for a little bit more discussion, my impression, though, is that in an ordinary situation, the best case scenario for the landowner / farmer is outright purchase, and then we take the development rights off, and then we go back to the market for it to be used by another farmer, which ties right into the whole succession planning thing where you're linking farmers up with other farmers. Yeah. It seems to make a lot of sense, but I feel like a big part of this is going to be our outreach to the cities as we continue to have our discussions about JPAs. But the last few days, giving a lot of thought to the situation with the cities, I think we keep looking for these opportunities where if we've talked about the whole charter thing and what can we do to make the cities work with us. I think we really have to strongly appeal to them to make this decision for themselves, that this is in the best interest of everyone in Lake County. This is in the best interest of the cities as well, to join our forces and really focus on how do we protect the rural properties and how do we join forces on issues like TDRs, because if you have a real TDR program in place, you could in fact make a lot of this work. Without their participation, TDRs is really, mean to be negative here, but it's almost impossible to do because that's where the density needs to be and is supposed to be in the urbanized areas. So without their participation, this whole thing with TDRs doesn't really work. And if we're going to buy development rights, we need to be able to put them somewhere. So, so that there's a market for them. And unless the cities agree that we're going to look at the University of Florida numbers and say, okay, here is the number that is a county-wide number, and we're not going to be this is what we're targeting for, we have to accommodate, then and we just freeze everything where it's at right now, I mean, it makes so much sense. If you can come close to freezing things where they are now, then there becomes a market for the TDRs to go to those urbanized areas for them to add densities where it makes sense to have densities. But I think it's been really helpful to hear from our experts today and from our farmers as well. We do have a couple cards, and we weren't going to do public input today just because we really were going to focus on information gathering. But I certainly want to give you a chance. There's just 3 cards, so if you do want to speak, if you want to forego speaking, we will be having other public meetings in the future. And you certainly can email us or reach out and contact us. But if you feel like you've got something to say that would add to what we've already discussed, I've got Cindy Newton, a card. It wouldn't be a county meeting if Cindy Newton didn't fill a card out to speak. And that was a compliment.
Cindy Newton, Unincorporated Eustis. The importance of our ag land is often overlooked, and often it's just viewed as acreage waiting for development. We do need a sustainable food source that's local for many reasons, even with what's going on the national level. Something I'd like to see at either the state or federal level would be the farmland soil of unique importance to be protected similarly to the prime farmland soil. A lot of our high recharge type A soils are also unique farmland soil. And while we're losing our recharge, it's also very important to keep that soil because once it's gone, it's gone. More on the local level, of course, there's our changes that we're working on with the ISBAs, JPAs to better protect our rural protection areas, our rural areas, and our special districts, the Green Swamp, Wacavias Protection Area, Ferndale. And I think we could even expand that into some of our overlay districts, such as the Lake Apopka overlay. There's some farms in there that could possibly be at least partially in that district that would help. You've got some ag land coming up pretty soon for zoning changes that are within that property. And also the CUPs that are coming before the county in the ag area. If those could be reviewed and not just put out there and hopefully looked at when somebody calls in for code enforcement violation. A lot of times those CUPs end up expanding without knowledge and affecting the ag land that's around it, besides the ag land that it's sitting on. So I would like to see some of those things at least looked at too.
All right, thank you,
appreciate
Cindy. Lori, is it Forster?
Thank you.
You go there.
Hi, Sean.
Hey.
Although I live just over the Lake County line in Orange County, my counterpart in Lake County is delivering a baby as we speak, so she can't be here. So I'm going to try very hard to communicate both. I live in the Lake Avalon Rural Settlement. It has 421 parcels. We are, the Avalon Home and Property Association also includes 298 parcels off of Phil C. Peters Road in Lake County. We work jointly as a group to ensure that we can preserve ag lands as much as we can in our area. We are surrounded by the conserve, and immediately to the south of that is, it's Horizon West to the south. To the north is Winter Garden, and to the west is Wellness Way. Flat Lake also ends the community on the Lake County side on Phil C. Peters Road, so that kind of gives you an idea of where we are. Not only are we trying to preserve ag lands for crops and livestock, but our rural area also acts as a water recharge area, the heat burden offset, air purification, wildlife sanctuary for both South Lake County and Orange County. And all of these are absolutely critical for the quality of life for those that live in our South Lake and West Orange County areas and the developments that are in there. We understand that it is a growth area, and we appreciate that. The majority of our parcels are in the Wekiva River Basin, and as Commissioner Simpson noted, that our land is less expensive because we're agriculture and we're one home per 5 acres. So developers are constantly trying to buy land within our rural settlement to develop and within the Lake County area to develop. As noted several times today, annexation changes the intensity and density of those lands. We feel it is important that this issue be addressed regarding land entitlements for annexed land. Commissioner Parks is familiar with what happened with Parkview Trail subdivision, which has a common property line with us and our folks that are in our association on the Lake County side. They are developing 958 dwellings with 200,000 square feet of commercial space. All of Wellness Way will have 15,000 dwellings, several million square feet of commercial buildings, and we were told that they would do non-potable water. Non-potable water does not exist in that area. So because of the intensity and density that's coming there, when we are advocating for Lake County to mandate that infrastructure be completed prior to providing COs with the promise that infrastructure will come, and if annexed, make a mandatory requirement for a municipality to annex the land and take that requirement of having the infrastructure such as non-potable water there before they are issued COs via a JPA.
Thank you. James J. Greiner, Lake County Cattlemen's Association.
Thank you. I'm Jay Greiner, lifelong resident of Lake County, and I'm currently the treasurer for the Lake County Cattlemen's Association. And with me today is Joe Crawford, who's our current president of the Lake County Cattlemen's Association. And I just wanted to make the board and the people here know that there is a Lake County Cattlemen's Association. We are an affiliate group of the Florida Cattlemen's Association, which is an affiliate group of the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. So that's our voice to go to Tallahassee on legislative weekends, to go to Washington D.C. on legislative weekends. This past year, the motto of the Cattlemen's Association has been loyal to the land. Year before that, it was cows keep Florida green. So the Cattlemen's Association have been fighting this battle all over the state and the nation for a long time. The Florida Cattlemen's Association started in 1916. I went through a box of archives that was passed on to me through the Lake County. I found a letter that acknowledged the Lake County Cattlemen's Association was on March 28, 1963. My passion is to raise a cow-calf operation. I love cattle. I've worked a career as a fireman and kept cattle on the side. The fear that I have and Joe has, and there's several of our members, Mr. Frost is a member of our organization. I farm on leased and rented land. It gets lost every month. I don't know, in this past year, I've helped 4 of my fellow cattlemen go move cattle off of land because the development has started. And right in front of my front door of my house is slated for a development to come. But I just want to thank the board for pushing to find resolutions for this, and know that the cattlemen that are true good cattlemen, we're producers. Sometimes I call people that own cattle pet owners instead of producers. But I just want to thank the board for your attention to them conserving our county.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate what you do. Yes. You have can we ask you a question, Jay?
Yes, all you want. I don't want that clock to run out.
All right. So just a lot of people don't know this, but Florida was #1 in cattle. Where are we sitting today with cattle?
I don't know if I have that number with me today. I did see in the National Cattlemen's book, or the Florida Cattlemen's, I will solicit a little bit. If you own a cow and you will join the Florida Cattlemen's Association, it's $150 for dues. $50 of that comes to our Lake County Association, which we use for the junior cattlemen shows. We have been able to do scholarships in the past and help a lot of FFA stuff. We're pretty quiet because our membership is low and pretty much non-active. When I got out of high school in Leesburg, right after Mr. Morris did.
Don't tell how old we are.
I worked cattle for a living for 7 years in the West Lake County borders and I like to tell the people who live in the villages, my horse may have pooped in your front yard. But I've seen all that change, and that's all we did was I worked cattle for many years over there. Florida was supposed to be number 2 in cattle production then. I think the last I saw, they're 9th or 10th.
Okay.
Lake County, the data that I have from the association that we pay our dues on now, Lake County's 19th in the state. And if you'll let me look at a paper here, 2023 and 2023-24, the data came back that there was 16,400 mama cows in Lake County. That's not counting calves on their side, that's producing mama cows. If you went back to 2018 and 19, we are at 14,000. So we've stayed about the same. We rank 19th, I think I said, in the counties as far as, we're ranked 19th in the counties of Florida as our number of mama cows that we have. So, yeah, it's, cattle land's taking a hit. I think the only thing that's taking a bigger hit is orange groves.
Yes, sir.
Since 83 and 84, the orange groves took a bigger hit than the cow pasture did. But our cattlemen are still out there fighting and pushing for conservative.
Well, I appreciate that. I just want to let all the people know that it's not from Florida. Florida used to be number 1 in cattle.
I always understood we were number 2 in cattle behind the state of Texas. Now, that might have been Texas saying they were bigger.
They're bigger than
But, I mean, I'm going back to what I remember is the late 70s, early 80s.
So I'm going back to the 40s when it was national.
I don't know. The data that comes out from the National Cattlemen stuff.
Will you find out for me?
What's that?
Will you find out for me?
I will.
Oh,
I will find out and let you know.
We're number 13 now in the country, 900,000 head of cattle. Texas has 4 million.
Yeah.
And I think we'll stay somewhat high as long as the Mormon operations, which own so many. But if the Orlando thing happens, they're all gone. So
Only half of it.
Yeah.
50,000 acres.
The data I saw, I don't know where to go back to it, but it was 888,000 head of cattle in the state. So I didn't know where that ranked us, but
yep, that's
the South Florida, south of Kissimmee, south of Orlando, and south of Kissimmee, is the majority of the state cattle business. The old cattleman said you had to be a grass farmer before you could be a cattleman. So if you didn't grow grass and take care of your land, you couldn't raise a cow. But
Well, Jay, my understanding is we don't ask how many cows you have because that's asking how much money you got in the bank.
That's a pretty good statement. You get a few. I got a few. I got a bunch. But I always tell people, Phil asked, you want some more cows? I'd always love to have more cows. I just don't have anywhere to put them.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have anywhere to put them. And I hate to say, in today's world, you're real cautious about who you get to come help you to work or who you get to come. Me personally, on my operation in local, most of the land that I operate on is investment land, and the fence was built 50 years ago. And the guy that leases you the land says, you got to maintain the fence. Well, you got to give me something to maintain. I say, I can't keep my cows on there because I'm tired of getting up at night when the sheriff's department called me and told me they walked out or somebody ran through the fence. If you have to go into a land and put up a new fence, which used to be, $2 a foot, now it's $6 a foot, and you're only making, the land only support 25 or 30 head of calves, so you took your profit for the next 20 years on a land that you don't even own. So that's what, I don't say keeps us beat down, but keeps in small operations. But I do love my time out in what land is here left. I get to see some pretty parts of Florida.
Well, this is great information. It's really helpful for us as we have these ongoing discussions too with the cities because, we talk about places to grow food and the need for that, but I haven't really heard until now the concept of we need places for the cattle to graze, right, in Lake County. And if we're what did you say, we're 19th in the state, we can make our target not to go down any further. We've got to have enough space.
That would be the other programs that they haven't touched on today is USDA programs through the Farm Service agencies here in the office in Tavares. It's paperwork intensive and to keep up with it, but there is programs that I participate myself in, do drought assistance, hurricane cleanup assistance, conservation. I do put I don't own the land, so there's some programs I can get in as a leasee. Some of the landowners are in on them, and some of the landowners, like, I don't want government on my land at all. And so there are programs out there that do help. I say that's what's kept me from losing money in the last 4 or 5 years, and I don't need a tax break enough to where I can afford to lose money. So there are programs out there that help the small farmer to go right along with the programs we've discussed today.
Great information.
If I can give any other assistance, you can find me at Lake County Cattlemen's. So,
Thank you, Jay.
thank you.
All right. Okay, all right. A couple more cards, and then we'll be wrapping it up. Michael Hill, Agriculture Sustainability. And we've heard the Hill name mentioned several times today.
How y'all doing? Name's Michael Hill. Live here in Lake County. I'm a third-generation Central Florida farmer. My family grew on the mucklands of Lake Apopka back from the 50s to the 90s. Y'all remember those days. My family owns Southern Hill Farms, and Ryan and I are partners here in Lake County, Orange County, with H&A Farms, so we grow blueberries and strawberries. My parents tried to talk me out of farming since I was a kid. I denied it, went to school, studied agriculture economics. You know, it's numbers and ag, I knew that, right? And then I got into farming for myself and started realizing the real numbers behind it all. And I think the reason why we're talking about this issue is an economic issue, right? Farmers are selling their land because it's not profitable anymore. It's, you know, it's just not. And not many people want to do it. I'm 37 years old. I'm completely bald right now, and a lot of it's because of how stressful it is, how hard it is to work. And we have more imported products from other countries than we're producing. So there's, you know, Simpson talked about, we used to be 290 million boxes in the state of Florida, and the industry can only sustain 40 to 60 million now. And you're probably thinking, why is that? There's 290 million. It's because it's all being produced in Brazil, right? It's the same thing. Blueberries, we grow blueberries, right? 60% of the blueberries are grown in other countries, right? It's not that we would be investing to buy more property, and farmers wouldn't be selling their land because they love their way of life, but they're just not making money. So the problem is finding leases that you can purchase property on, but then lease it back to a farmer. The numbers make sense. If you buy it for $10 million, but you only lease it for $20,000 a year, it's not a good investment, right? So that's the issue that we're in is there's farmers out there that want to grow and want to continue their way of life, but they literally are dying, right? And I'm seeing it firsthand. We work with farmers all over the state on packing and selling their fruit, and I see their numbers, and they talk to me every day, saying, I don't know if I can make it another year, you know? And that's food crops, because we're in the state of Florida. We produce at the same time that Mexico does. Our wage rates are going to $14, $15 an hour. You know what they pay? So we pay $200 a day, pretty much, $150 to $200 a day. They pay $5 to $20 a day. 35% of our cost of goods sold is labor just to harvest the crop. When 35% of your cost of goods sold is at $200 a day, and your competition is doing it for $5 to $20, which is a 20th to a 10th of your cost, there's no way to stay in business. So we're working hard. I'm going to go a few seconds longer. We're working hard to work with the University of Florida, IFAS, to try to develop machine harvestable crops that we can grow and not have that cost. But there's a lot of growers just aren't going to make it. So the reason why farmers are selling is because they are losing money and they can't feed their own family, right? And we say fresh from Florida. Well, the produce buyer at Publix, shouldn't say the name Publix, but any retailer is going to buy the product that's cheaper for them, okay? So we have to compete on a free market with other countries that have way lower costs than we do. And yes, you can ask for fresh from Florida, but at the end of the day, the buyer is going to buy the cheaper product, right? So anyways, I'm off my soapbox, but it's a real issue that growers are having. And I'm the youngest grower probably in this room today. And I'm just trying, I plan on going for decades, right? But I'm telling you the real challenges I'm sitting here facing, saying, how do I make it another 5, 10, 15 years?
A question, Chairman?
Sure, if you're.
Sure, just a question if you could. Yeah, so I totally sympathize and obviously see it the same way you do, but obviously some of what you described is a federal and a state
Yeah, you can't do
solution.
anything about it.
But in the sort of limited resources and regards we have in terms of this bond and this land buying, what role do you think, or would you like to see this board play in using the limited power we have to expand and protect? I'd like to see it expanded, but really at least protect working agricultural lands. What are your thoughts? I mean, not trying to put you on the spot here, but what do you think that the county can do to help partner with farms in the county so that they expand? I mean, that's all we can do is buy land, entitlement rights, keep land basically. If we bind land in such a way where it can only be used as ag, I mean, is that something you think that would be good for the working farms in the county? I mean,
Well, it depends on what your threshold is and what you can buy it and what you can lease it for. It comes down to an economics. That's what I was trying to say before. Because if a farmer needs to sell his land, just like, forgot your name, he said he's $10 million in, they're offering him $2 million, he can't do that, right? So, but if you're leasing it to cattle, they can probably pay $250 an acre, maybe. I don't know, what is cattle lease going? $50 an acre, right? The numbers don't make sense.
$20.
Okay, $20 an acre. You can't make an investment and then put cattle on it for $20 an acre. You're going to lose that money will be gone before you know it, right? So that's the true economics behind this issue. So you said, what can you do? It's really, in my opinion, what you could do is do a social media campaign with everybody in the county calling out the retailers to buy domestic product.
Totally agree, yeah.
But it's not go to the produce manager. He's going to be like, yeah, okay. But the customer of the retailer is the consumer.
Oh yeah, I totally agree.
But and they don't like upset customers. But that's a little thing. It sounds little.
No, but it's big, yeah.
But U.S. growers are going out of business because we have free trade with other countries on food, right? And at a much cheaper cost to do it. And our labor costs are going up and up. Our insurance costs are going up. Everything's going up, and it's just pushing us right out. So, yeah, you can buy it, but I'm concerned you're not going to have anybody to put on the land. And everyone says, well, we want farming, we want farming. Well, go buy a farm. Get in it. So, anyways. And you said agritourism. Agritourism is great, but I tell you, that's another tough business because you got to maintain a lot of property. You got to deal with customers. I mean, honestly, we haven't made much money in our agritourism business. As it is, we're trying to see it as a diversification model. I'm just telling the God's honest truth. Because that's a tough business too. And more competition in that makes it even harder to make business, make profitable business. So anyways.
No, that's great information. That's really helpful. And I love the idea of maybe through our economic development efforts that we really push the, grown in Florida and Lake County agriculture and use that as a way to get people more in tune with the fact that we want to support our local farmers. And I think that would then go a long way to us continuing our land use efforts, with our cities so that we just get everybody on the same page. This is really what we want to achieve. We want to have a Lake County that continues to have farmers and agriculture throughout our county, and just start right there with pushing, support as consumers. Let's support our local farmers. And just one of many things that I think we need to be doing. But I like that idea a lot.
Yeah, I'm seeing a potential resolution maybe from the commission encouraging, we won't name names, but encouraging to buy state of Florida.
Well, I was thinking about FFA and fence building and programs to even help get out there and sort of make some of that stuff happen.
Point about that's where we have to make that big change there, starting to buy local. Yeah.
Well, if I could just say one more thing, usually we don't, it's like an extension of the panel, but, hopefully you're very involved with the network of political agricultural organizations because Tallahassee bends over backwards for Publix. And the agriculture in Florida needs to do everything you just said and just really hammer Publix next legislative session. Say, listen, if you're going to allow all these countries to put out Florida farmers, why is our state legislature doing everything Publix wants? They are one of the 2 or 3. They're right there with Disney, most powerful special interests in the states. And you guys should just absolutely, hammer that and make that your number one thing that this retailer needs to differentiate, whether it be shelf space, et cetera, emphasis. I mean, the Fresh from Florida sticker is this big. Maybe it needs to be a section. It's not saying you need a government law, but they need to put pressure on Publix to get with the program, in my opinion. But sorry, not trying to pass the buck. We have limited resources. I want to know, I've been very clear that I want to use between just pure agricultural or, conservation easement, pretty land to look at, or buy entitlement rights to keep working farms. I'm on the side of the working farms. I want to use all the power money we have in Lake County to help ag, not just buy pieces of land that look nice and sit there. So, but I hope the state responds.
All righty, thank you. And the school board is meeting in here after we finish, and we have 3 cards, so if you guys can try to either defer your time or keep it super short so we can get out of here and get the school board in here. So Mark Ronco, you'll defer? Thank you, I appreciate it, and feel free to send us an email. Mark Ronco, and I'll
come tomorrow at 9 a.m.
Yeah, and we have a meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. Andrea, if you want to call in at the beginning of our meeting, that would be another one too. But Mark?
Hi, I'm a resident of unincorporated Howey in the Hills. I'm a native, born and raised of Lake County. My family's been here for a pretty long time. I come from a farm background. In fact, my mother's family, her farm in her native country has been in our family for over 300 years. So the fruit literally didn't fall very far from the tree. I've had the privilege of owning a grove in Howey. Well, we have, my family, for the past 25 years or so. And I recently replanted that grove. So I'm on a mission from God. There are very few growers left, and I think it's kind of ironic and kind of sad that in Howey especially, and as you may know, Commissioner, is a town founded basically on citrus by a citrus baron, and I'm probably the last grove that I know of anyway, unless maybe something on the other side. So I wanted to say thank you to you guys, all of you, for your zeal and for this hurrah to try to protect what's left. I think we're an endangered species. We're right up there with the panther at this point. So I appreciate that. I wanted to just say, too, I've worked with lovely people with USDA, NRCS, FDACS, St. John's. I've had the privilege of working with some lovely people. I had a little bit of pushback from some of the county offices, and I certainly hope that because you guys are doing this, that will carry on to some of the offices as well, and that your offices will be a little bit more understanding or more willing to, I guess, support and work with those of us that are left in this dying industry. And that's really all I wanted to say, and I thank you guys for your time. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, Mr. Ronco. All right, Rick Gonzalez, and that'll be our last card, and then we'll be able to wrap up and let the school board get on with their business.
I just wanted to be brief that I'm glad that Tom mentioned Dean Saunders. Him and JT are probably the kingpins in this subject matter, but and I don't know how many applications there are in Lake County right now. I know that our office has 6. I think you should go look at what's been ranked already and pick the ones you like, because it took a 2-year process to get on the list. So just let you know that. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you for...
I had the opportunity to have lunch with the commissioner, and I've already asked to have that list sent.
Okay, great. All right. Well, that's very helpful, and I know we're going to be assembling our advisory committee very soon, and we're going to have to work on some parameters as well and get some advice from our attorneys on how we can work that criteria into making sure that we stay within what's allowed and required by the referendum itself.
Yeah, just real quick, while we got whoever's left here, if you notice the mural in the rotunda, right, did you see all that as you're coming in? That, I just wanted to make that, we're going to have a press release on that, I think, but that is a gift from the Florida Wildlife Corridor Foundation for us. It's a loan, I know, but it's a loan through our process.
How long do we have
Sorry,
it?
a gift
How long is
that's
it
a loan.
here?
It's I think for a year. I think it's going to be for a year. Till October, only till October? Oh, so we got to finish our comp plan by October. Yeah. Okay, well, I was talking with them, it was like it would be a year, but that's all right. Just go ahead and take a look at that. That was, I like to call it the people like us do things like this mural, so that you see the agricultural influence that's part of that and everything else that we do. And I'm just thankful to them if they're still here for us, for loaning that to us. So.
Well, and I appreciate that, and everybody enjoy it, and I think the key now is, I mean, we talk about these things, we know what we want to, we know, we have a vision for what we'd like to see happen. The key now is finding a way to actually make it happen, and that's where it's going to get harder and more difficult, but you got to start somewhere, and so I think this was a great start today, and I look forward to working with everyone on this endeavor, and thank you to our farmers for all your participation, and we'll see where this takes us, but hopefully it'll take us to a place where we save more agriculture and we promote agriculture continuing in Lake County.